What if I told you that nothing in your life is random, that every heartbreak has a purpose? Every unexpected phone call arrives at precisely the right moment, and every person who crosses your path comes to teach you something essential. Right now, wherever you are, maybe it's 3 in the morning and sleep won't come, or you're driving to work feeling disconnected, or sitting quietly in need of peace. There's a reason you found this message today. Something beautiful happens when we realize that, although we're scattered across the planet, we're drawn to the same timeless wisdom. So get comfortable, wrap yourself in a soft blanket, dim the lights if you can, and for the next 3 hours allow yourself to be held by 2,500 years of understanding about why everything happens exactly as it should. The Buddha discovered a truth that changes everything. What we call coincidence is an intricate web of causes and effects. Your struggles aren't punishments. Your joys aren't accidents. They're part of a magnificent pattern guiding you toward awakening from the day you were born. Buddhism teaches that every moment contains a hidden gift, and tonight we're going to unwrap those gifts together. Right now, as you listen, your cells are changing in the time it takes to hear these words. Millions of cells in your body have died and been replaced. Your skin is shedding microscopic pieces. Your thoughts are shifting from one idea to another, and even your breath is different from the last one. Everything in existence is in constant motion. The chair you sit on is made of atoms vibrating at incredible speeds, and the earth beneath you spins through space at over 1,000 miles per hour. Nothing, absolutely nothing, stays exactly the same for even a single moment. Yet we fight this truth every day, clinging to our happy moments and wishing they would last forever. We want our children to stay small and innocent, our bodies to remain young and strong, and our relationships to feel exactly as they did in those perfect early days. Yet when things inevitably change, we suffer. This is what Buddhism calls the first noble truth. Life contains suffering, and much of it arises from our resistance to impermanence. We create our own pain by demanding that the flowing river of existence stand still, like trying to hold water in our cupped hands, only to watch it slip away faster the tighter we squeeze. This is what we do with everything we love, forgetting that water was never meant to be held, but to flow. 2.5 millennia ago, the Buddha sat beneath a tree and observed the world with fresh eyes. He saw flowers bloom and wither, clouds form and dissolve, and even his own thoughts arise and pass away like waves on the ocean. From this, he realized something profound. All conditioned things are impermanent, and in that truth lies the path to liberation. Think of a river. Have you ever truly watched one? The water doesn't resist its banks or fight the rocks in its way. When it meets a boulder, it doesn't stop. It simply finds another path, carving new channels, adapting, continuing. The river teaches us those obstacles aren't here to stop us, but to guide us toward new directions. And through all its changes, it never ceases to be a river. In fact, change makes life more beautiful. Just as the bends and curves of a river create the most stunning landscapes, what if you could flow like water, moving gracefully around the rocks in your path, instead of breaking against them? Nature already understands this wisdom. Autumn does not cling to summer's warmth, and trees do not fight to keep their leaves when winter arrives. They let go willingly, trusting that spring will return, and in that surrender, they not only survive, but thrive. We humans, however, often resist. When autumn comes into our lives, we panic. When the leaves of our old life fall away, we frantically try to glue them back on, fighting the seasons of our existence instead of dancing with them. A woman once told me about losing her job at 52. For months she resisted, applying for similar positions, desperately trying to recreate what she had lost. Like forcing spring flowers to bloom in December. The harder she fought, the more exhausted she became. Then one day, as she sat in her garden, watching a tree shed its leaves, She realized the tree wasn't dying, it was preparing, making space for something new. In that moment, she stopped fighting her autumn and began preparing for her spring. 6 months later, she launched the business she had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. What once felt like an ending revealed itself as a beginning, but only when she stopped resisting and learned to flow with change. Your body already knows this truth. Your cells don't mourn when they are replaced. Your hair doesn't grieve when it falls out and grows back, and your skin doesn't resist when it sheds and renews itself. Every part of your physical being understands that change is not death, but regeneration. It is only the mind that resists, because the mind creates story. The mind takes the flowing river of experience and tries to build permanent structures on its banks, labeling moments as good or bad, clinging to the pleasant ones while desperately avoiding the painful. But rivers do not recognize human labels. They simply flow. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, from our need to make permanent what is inherently temporary. We attach ourselves to people, situations, feelings, and identities, building our happiness on shifting sands, and wondering why we feel unstable when the tide inevitably comes in. Yet here lies the liberating truth. When you deeply understand impermanence, you don't love less, you love more. Knowing that this moment with your child, this conversation with a friend, or this sunset before you will never appear in the same way again, makes it infinitely precious. Impermanence doesn't strip life of meaning, it infuses it with urgency and beauty. A master calligrapher spends years perfecting the brush, each stroke filled with grace and presence, all while knowing that the ink will fade and the paper will crumble. The art's impermanence doesn't make it meaningless, it makes each stroke sacred. Your life is like that calligraphy. Each day, a brush stroke, each relationship a flowing line of ink across the paper of time. Nothing will last forever, but everything matters completely. When you stop resisting the current and begin to move with it, you discover that change is not your enemy, but your teacher and liberator. Every ending opens space for a new beginning. Every loss makes room for unexpected gain. The river does not mourn the banks it leaves behind. It celebrates the new landscapes it will encounter. The tree does not grieve its fallen leaves. It trusts the wisdom of the seasons. You too can learn to dance with change instead of wrestling against. This doesn't mean passivity, for rivers are powerful. They carve canyons and move mountains not through resistance but through persistent, gentle flow. You can be like water, soft enough to find the path of least resistance, yet strong enough to shape the very landscape of your life. And right now, something in your life is changing. Perhaps it's obvious, a relationship ending, a job shifting, a move to a new place, or perhaps it's subtle, your interests evolving, your perspective broadening, your heart opening to new possibility. Whatever the change may be, you are faced with a choice. You can fight the current and exhaust yourself, or you can take a deep breath, loosen your grip, and allow the river to carry you toward something you cannot yet see, but was always meant for you. The Buddha's insight echoes through every moment. All conditioned things are impermanent. This means your suffering is temporary, your fear is temporary, and your confusion is temporary. But it also means your joy, your success, and even your youth are temporary as well. And this is not a tragedy. It is the most beautiful truth in the universe. Because when you truly understand impermanence, when you feel it in your very bones, you stop taking anything for granted. You begin to show up fully for your life, to love with your whole heart, knowing that love is the only thing that multiplies the more you give it away. The river keeps flowing, the seasons keep turning, your cells keep changing, and you have a choice to flow with this magnificent dance of existence, or to exhaust yourself fighting against its perfect rhythm. Everything changes. This is the first law of life. Yet within all that change, There is something that never changes, the awareness that notices the flow, the consciousness that observes the river, the presence that remains constant as everything else transforms. That presence is you. And the time has come to stop fighting and start flowing. For every action creates a ripple. Nothing you do disappears into thin air. Every word you speak, every thought you think, every gesture you make creates waves that travel far beyond what you can see. Like dropping a stone into a perfectly still lake, your actions send ripples across the vast ocean of existence. This is karma, but not the karma most people imagine. It is not a cosmic scorecard tallying good deeds against bad, nor a divine judge, rewarding saints and punishing sinners. Karma is natural law, cause and effect, as simple and predictable as gravity. Drop something and it falls. Plant a seed and something grows. Act and ripples expand outward. The universe does not judge your actions as good or bad. It simply responds. Imagine standing beside a mountain lake. On a calm morning, the surface so still, it mirrors the sky and trees with perfect clarity. You pick up a small stone, pause with it in your hand, then release it. The stone breaks the surface with a gentle splash, and immediately ripples spread outward. First small and close, then larger, each ring giving rise to the next, until waves travel across the entire lake, reaching distant shores you cannot even see. The stone itself disappears beneath the surface, but its effect continues. Those ripples will eventually reach every edge of the lake, brushing against the roots of distant trees, nudging sleeping fish, and weaving together with other ripples from other stones, cast by other people on other days. One small action creates endless consequences, and your life works in exactly the same way. Every action you take is a stone dropped into the lake of existence. Every word is a ripple, every thought a wave, and just like water, their effects travel far beyond what you can ever measure. But here's where karma becomes even more profound. It's not only your actions that create ripples, your thoughts do too. The Buddha taught that everything begins in the mind. Before you speak, you think. Before you act, you decide. Before you create anything in the outer world, you first create it within your consciousness. Your thoughts are the first ripples, the currents that set everything else in motion. Think back to the last time you were truly angry. Perhaps someone cut you off in traffic or spoke words that pierced your heart. Notice what happened first. The thoughts of anger arose before any harsh words left your mouth, before resentment fueled your action. Those thoughts were already shaping ripples, shifting your energy, altering your presence, and coloring the way you moved through the rest of your day. A man once told me about his daily commute. Every morning he drove the same route, and every morning traffic frustrated him. He would sit gripping the wheel, his mind flooded with irritation toward other drivers. By the time he reached the office, he was tense and short-tempered, snapping at colleagues who in turn grew defensive, until the whole office grew heavy with that negativity, an energy he would carry home to his family. Then one morning he chose to try something different. Instead of fighting the traffic in his mind, he practiced acceptance. Instead of angry thoughts, he turned to gratitude for his car, for his job, for simply being alive on this particular morning. The traffic itself didn't change, but everything else did. He arrived calm and centered. His colleagues noticed the peace in his presence. Conversations flowed more easily, and the ripples of his inner shift touched everyone around him. This is the power of mental karma. Your thoughts shape your reality, not through magic, but through the ripple effects of consciousness meeting the world. When you think with compassion, you see opportunities for kindness. When you think with fear, you see threats everywhere. When you think with gratitude, you discover abundance. Your mind shapes what you perceive, and what you perceive shapes how you act. But karma does not flow in straight lines. Karma is not a simple transaction where a good deed equals a good result. Life is far more intricate and beautiful than that. Sometimes the ripples of your actions take years to return. Sometimes they come back transformed in ways you never expected, and sometimes they circle the globe before finding their way home. Think of a kindness you once offered that returned to you unexpectedly. Perhaps you gave directions to a stranger and months later found yourself guided when you were lost, or you patiently listened to a friend in crisis, and years later discovered comfort in the words of someone who barely knew you. Or maybe you smiled at a child in a grocery store, and that child grew into someone who went on to brighten the world in ways you will never witness. Take a moment now. Can you remember an act of kindness you gave freely with no expectation in return? And can you recall a moment when kindness found you exactly when you needed it most? These are not coincidences, but ripples completing their journey across the great lake of existence. The Buddha spoke of 3 kinds of karma: the karma of body, your physical actions in the world; the karma of speech, the words you choose and how you speak them; and the karma of mind, your thoughts, intentions, and inner formation. All 3 create ripples, yet mental karma is the most powerful because it shapes everything else. Consider 2 people performing the exact same action, both giving money to someone in need. One gives grudgingly, resenting the loss, while the other gives joyfully, grateful for the chance to help. Outwardly, the actions are identical, but inwardly the karmic ripples are completely different. One creates separation and scarcity, the other creates connection and abundance. The intention behind the action determines the quality of the ripple. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes purifying the mind. When you heal your thoughts, you heal your actions. When you transform your consciousness, you transform your world. It is not about becoming perfect or eliminating negative thoughts, but about noticing them with awareness and consciously choosing the ripples you want to create. Many people worry that focusing on karma might make them calculating, as if kindness should only be practiced in order to receive something in return. But true understanding of karma reveals the opposite. When you recognize how deeply interconnected all beings are, you see that helping others is inseparable from helping yourself, and compassion naturally flows from this awareness. One teacher once invited her students to observe their ripples for a single day: how their mood affected their families at breakfast, how their presence shaped interactions with co-workers, how their energy influenced the cashier at the store, or how their driving impacted other drivers. The students were astonished to discover how much subtle power they carried to brighten or darken the world around them, simply through shifts in consciousness. You too have that power right now. Even as you read these words, the quality of your attention is like a stone dropped into the lake of existence. The intention you hold for how you wish to move through the world will create ripples that extend far beyond what you can see, touching lives you may never meet. This truth is both humbling and empowering. Every moment matters, every choice carries weight, and every thought has power. While you cannot reclaim the stones you have already thrown, you can always choose more wisely from this moment forward. Karma is often mistaken for fatalism, the belief that everything is fixed and unchangeable. But in reality, it is about both responsibility and possibility. The past has shaped your present, but your present choices are shaping the future. Every moment offers a new chance to place fresh stones in the water. This doesn't mean obsessing over every thought or action. That would be exhausting and impossible, like trying to control every ripple on a vast lake. Instead, it means focusing on the quality of your intentions, cultivating kindness in your heart, and practicing awareness in your mind. When your actions spring from love and wisdom, trust that the ripples will reach exactly where they need to go. The beauty of karma lies in its openness. It is never too late to begin again. No matter what ripples you may have sent out in the past, this very moment offers a clean slate, an opportunity to choose to be a source of healing rather than harm. Today, you have the choice to spread joy instead of suffering, to cultivate thoughts that uplift rather than diminish. Picture again the still mountain lake and yourself standing at its edge with a handful of smooth stones. each one symbolizing a choice you are about to make. Every stone you throw sends ripples across the water of existence. The question is, what kind of ripples do you want to create? What waves will you send into the world? The lake is waiting, perfectly still, ready to receive the imprint of your intentions. This is the essence of karma, not punishment or reward, but pure possibility, not fate but freedom, the freedom to choose, moment by moment, the quality of the waves you cast into life. The ripples you create today will reach distant shores you cannot yet imagine, shaping lives and moments beyond your awareness. So, choose wisely, choose with love, choose with the understanding that every thought carries power, every action holds weight, and every moment is an opportunity to leave the world a little more beautiful than you found it. Yet alongside this freedom lies one of Buddhism's deepest insights. Our suffering arises not from life's natural changes, but from our attachment to them. We cling desperately to what was never meant to stay forever. Moments already slipping away, people who must follow their own paths, circumstances destined to change. In this grasping, in this refusal to let go, we create our own suffering. Life itself is not what breaks us. It is our insistence that it remain unchanged. Attachment is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers, leaving you empty and confused. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha saw this truth clearly beneath the Bodhi tree. Suffering is not born from external events but from the mind's habit of attachment, its relentless attempt to possess, control, and make permanent what is impermanent. Think of the last time your heart was broken, perhaps the end of a relationship, the passing of someone you loved, or a dream that never came to fruition. Was the pain born from the fact that something beautiful had ended, or from the longing that it should last forever? Sadness is natural when we lose what we hold dear, but the deep ache, the restless resistance to what is, comes not from life itself, but from attachment. Suffering often arises from our refusal to let life flow as it must, and this resistance is born of attachment. Attachment disguises itself as love, but it is really love's shadow. True love wants what is best for the beloved, even if that means letting go, while attachment seeks to possess, to control, to freeze life in place. Love says, I want you to be happy. Attachment says, I want you to make me happy. A mother watching her child grow and leave for college illustrates this well. If her love is free from attachment, she feels pride and gratitude for the independent adult her child has become. She may miss them, but she celebrates their growth. If her love is tangled in attachment, she suffers, clinging to her role as the center of her child's life, instead of embracing the beauty of what is unfolding. The same truth applies to everything we think we own: our homes, our jobs, our health, even our youth. We act as though these things belong to us permanently, when in reality, we are only temporary caretakers. An ancient Buddhist story captures this wisdom. A master cherished a flawless crystal glass, using it daily for tea and admiring its elegance. When a student asked if he feared the glass breaking, the master replied with a smile, "In my mind, this glass is already broken." Surprised, the student questioned how such a perfect glass could be thought of as broken. The master explained that the glass, like all things, is impermanent, formed from sand and fire and shaped by human hands. One day it will inevitably return to the elements, whether by accident, age, or after the master himself is gone. Because he fully accepts its impermanence, he wastes no energy fearing its loss. Instead, he savors its beauty completely while it exists. The student began to see by embracing impermanence, the master was free to enjoy the glass fully. This is the paradox of non-attachment. When you stop trying to hold on to life, you gain the freedom to truly experience it. When you let go of the demand that love conform to your desires, you awaken to love in its many forms. Non-attachment does not diminish appreciation, it deepens it. Every moment becomes more precious, precisely because you know it cannot last forever. And in releasing the death grip of attachment, you finally feel life flowing freely through your open hands. Non-attachment does not mean being cold, distant, or uncaring. It means caring so deeply that you genuinely want what is best for others, even if that means they must move away from you. It is the difference between loving with an open hand rather than a closed fist. Imagine how your relationships might feel if you practice loving without possession, appreciating your partner for who they are instead of trying to mold them into your ideal, celebrating your friends' growth without fearing they might outgrow you, or guiding your children toward independence with joy instead of clinging in fear. This same freedom extends into every area of life: your career, your financial goals, your plans for the future. What would change if you pursued your dreams wholeheartedly, yet held them lightly, working with dedication, but releasing the demand for specific outcomes, planting seeds while trusting the garden to grow in its own time and way? This isn't passivity or indifference. In fact, those who practice non-attachment often care more deeply about alleviating suffering than those who are attached to recognition. Without the need for credit, your focus can rest entirely on being truly helpful. Without rigid expectations, you can meet each moment with wisdom and clarity. The path of letting go begins in small, ordinary ways: loosening your grip on your phone during a stressful call, noticing when your breath tightens as you wait for news, softening your shoulders when someone doesn't act as you wish. These small tensions reveal the mind's attachment. Each time you release them, you practice freedom. Whether it's surrendering your frustration to slow traffic by simply being present, or letting go of your need to be right by listening with curiosity, every act of release is a step toward living with openness, peace, and genuine love. When plans shift unexpectedly, the practice of non-attachment invites you to soften your grip on how things should be and remain open to what is unfolding. This teaching is not about loss, but about abundance, because when you stop pouring your energy into clinging to what you already have, you create space to receive what is coming. When you release the need to possess, you become more available for authentic connection. When you stop grasping, your hands are finally free to both give and receive with grace. Every spiritual tradition points to this same truth. Christians speak of letting go and letting God. Taoists teach Wu Wei, effortless action in harmony with nature's flow, and indigenous wisdom keepers remind us that we belong to the land rather than the land belonging to us. All of these paths reveal the same liberation, the freedom that comes from releasing the illusion of control. In your own life, there is likely something you're holding too tightly, perhaps a relationship you want to force, a job you fear losing, or even a version of yourself you're desperate to preserve. Sometimes it's subtler, like expecting your day to unfold a certain way, needing others to fully understand you, or demanding that life align perfectly with your vision. What would change if you loosened your grip, not abandoning or neglecting, but holding gently, like a butterfly resting on your palm, present, appreciative, and willing to let it go when the time comes? This is the art of letting go, not one dramatic act of release, but a daily softening, a choice to meet life with trust rather than control, flow rather than rigidity, love rather than possession. It is the quiet recognition that what is meant for you will find you, and what leaves was never truly yours to keep. The master's glass sits on his table, beautiful yet temporary, and he drinks his tea with gratitude, fully aware that both the glass and the moment are gifts that remain precious without the need to grasp. In accepting their impermanence, he uncovers something that never shatters or fades, the peace born of letting go, the freedom that arises from release, and the love that expands when shared without attachment. Our hands are already full of everything we truly need. We simply must loosen our grip long enough to notice. This same wisdom shines in the story of the farmer whose horse ran away. While the neighbors rushed to label each turn of events as good or bad, fortune or misfortune, the farmer wisely responded with only his calm detachment revealed a deeper truth. Life cannot be neatly divided into blessings and curses, for what seems disastrous today may become tomorrow's salvation, and what feels like good fortune may carry unforeseen challenges. Acceptance, then, does not mean we must like what happens. It means we learn to meet life without clinging to judgment, open to the mysterious unfolding beyond our limited perspective. Acceptance means recognizing that our resistance to life's unfolding often creates more suffering than the events themselves, and realizing that existence carries an intelligence far beyond our limited understanding. Many of us are locked in battles, facing changes we never chose, such as a job loss, the end of a relationship, health struggles, or relocation. Others wrestle with inner storms, like persistent anxiety, lingering sadness, or anger that feels justified but slowly consumes us. Some exhaust themselves trying to fix or perfect aspects of their identity, not knowing how to stop the fight. Buddhism teaches that every moment spent resisting what is already here is stolen from life itself. Every ounce of energy used to push against reality could instead nourish something beautiful, and every thought about how things should be different robs us of the chance to appreciate what is. Yet acceptance is often misunderstood. People imagine it as passivity, resignation, or surrendering and defeat. In truth, acceptance is deeply active. It's the difference between thrashing against a current and learning to flow with it. Resistance drains us, keeping us stuck, while acceptance allows us to harness the river's power, to move with direction and clarity rather than exhaustion. One woman, after losing her job of 15 years, discovered this firsthand. At first, she resisted her job loss with everything she had, desperately applying for similar positions in hopes of recreating what she had lost. Sleepless nights were filled with worries about money, anger at the unfairness of corporate downsizing, and frantic networking just to get back to where she once was. It was like swimming upstream in a raging river, exhausting herself without moving forward. Months of struggle led to a realization: fighting the current wasn't taking her anywhere, it was only draining her. So she shifted. She accepted the job loss, not because she welcomed it, but because it was already true. Letting go of wasted energy on wishing things were different, she began to ask what this change might be teaching her. In that space of acceptance, something transformed. Instead of clinging to old roles, she explored work that could genuinely fulfill her. Hidden interests resurfaced, and she took a part-time position that paid less, but gave her the freedom to train in a field she had long been curious about. 6 months later, she was doing work she loved more than anything in the last decade. The job loss that felt like the end of my world was actually the beginning of my real life, she said, but I only saw it once I stopped fighting what had already happened and started working with what was true. This is the paradox of acceptance. The moment you stop resisting your circumstances, you free yourself to change them. When you're no longer exhausting your energy resisting reality, you unlock the power to shape what comes next. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It means responding to the present with wisdom instead of reacting from fear. The Buddha called this right effort, one of the steps on the Noble Eightfold. Right effort isn't about pushing harder or forcing your way through resistance. It's about using your energy wisely, aligning with life's natural flow instead of battling against it. Like a swimmer learning to move with the current, or a tree in a storm bending with the wind, acceptance reveals strength through flexibility. The tree doesn't lose its essence when it bends, rather it shows its resilience. In the same way, acceptance is not weakness, but intelligence, a conscious response to reality as it is. It doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect or ignoring injustice. It means starting from the truth of what is actually happening, which allows for clear, wise action. When we resist reality, we cloud our vision and lose the ability to act skillfully. As one meditation teacher explained, pain is what happens, but suffering is what we add to pain through resistance. The burn from touching something hot is pain. It's natural and even useful, signaling us to move our hand away, but replaying the moment, wishing it hadn't happened, or resenting it for hours, that's suffering, an unnecessary second layer we create. Most emotional suffering works the same way. Something painful happens, but instead of allowing the natural emotion to arise and pass, we resist, tell stories, and imagine alternate realities, multiplying our pain. Acceptance breaks this cycle. It allows us to feel emotions fully, but without clinging, like weather moving across the sky. Sadness, anger, fear, all come and go. We don't get stuck fighting the storm, we let it pass through. Far from making us numb, this openness deepens our ability to feel, transforming our relationship with life. When you stop resisting your emotions, you begin to feel them with greater clarity. Sadness, when accepted instead of fought, moves naturally through you and completes its cycle. Anger, when allowed without judgment, reveals the boundaries that need to be honored. Fear, when welcomed instead of rejected, points toward the areas of life that require care and attention. The practice of acceptance starts small, like sitting in traffic. Rather than fighting the delay, notice the resistance in your body, the tightness in your jaw, the tension in your shoulders, then soften. The traffic won't change, but your experience of it can. The same practice applies to minor disappointments, plans falling apart, technology failing, or people not meeting your expectations. Each moment of choosing acceptance over resistance strengthens your ability to meet life's greater storms with grace. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up your preferences or abandoning change. Just as the farmer still tended to his horses and land without labeling each event as good or bad, you too can care deeply while remaining unattached. You can desire ease while accepting struggle, pursue goals while staying open to different outcomes, and love fully while allowing others their freedom. This is the wisdom of maybe. Maybe the hardship you face is shaping your strength. Maybe the loss is clearing space for something new. Maybe the detour is the path itself. Acceptance doesn't demand that you like or understand your circumstances, only that you stop resisting them long enough to see what they offer. Ask yourself what would happen if you stopped fighting for a moment, if you said maybe to your difficulty, if you trusted the current of life to carry you where you need to be. The river of existence is vast and powerful. You can drain yourself resisting it, or you can learn to flow with it in wisdom and grace. The choice in every moment is yours. Perhaps what you're resisting is exactly what you're being called to embrace. Every scar tells a story of survival. Look at your hands for a moment. The small marks there are tiny reminders of the times life tested your resilience and you endured. The thin line across your knuckle from learning to ride a bike, the barely visible mark from a childhood accident that taught you to be more careful. Each one is proof that you have faced difficulty and continued on, but the deepest scars aren't always visible on our skin. They're etched into our hearts and minds by experiences that challenged everything we thought we knew about life. The loss that broke your heart open, the failure that forced you to question your path, the betrayal that revealed hard truths about human nature, the illness that reminded you how fragile and precious health really is. Buddhism teaches something surprising about these difficult experiences. They're not punishments meant to break you down, nor evidence that life is cruel or meaningless. They are, instead, some of life's most important teachers, messengers carrying wisdom that can only be delivered through direct experience. Yet in our darkest moments, most of us are so focused on escaping the pain that we miss its message. The Buddha discovered this truth through his own life. Before enlightenment, he was Prince Siddhartha, sheltered from all hardship by a father who tried to shield him from old age, sickness, and death. But when Siddhartha finally encountered these realities, he didn't just see suffering, He saw the universal human condition. He realized that avoiding pain wasn't the path to peace. Transforming our relationship to pain was. This insight became one of Buddhism's most profound teachings. Suffering isn't the opposite of wisdom. Suffering, when met with awareness and acceptance, becomes wisdom's birthplace. Every challenge you faced has contained a hidden gift, even if you weren't ready to see it at the time. Think about the most difficult period in your life, losing someone you couldn't imagine living without, a health crisis that stopped your world in its tracks, a professional failure that shattered your sense of identity, a relationship you thought would last forever, but didn't. In the midst of those experiences, you probably couldn't see any purpose in your pain. Yet those very moments hold the seeds of transformation if you're willing to look. But now, with the perspective that only time can provide, you may see how those difficulties shaped you, not only in the surface level sadness, fear, or loss, but in the subtler, deeper transformations. Perhaps they softened you, making you more compassionate toward others who suffer. Perhaps they revealed a strength you didn't know you had. Perhaps they clarified what truly matters. Perhaps they broke your heart only so it could open wider. This is what Buddhism calls the noble quality of suffering. Not that suffering itself is noble, but that consciousness holds the extraordinary ability to draw wisdom and meaning even from life's most painful moments. Like an alchemist turning base metal into gold, awareness transforms wounds into insight. But this transformation is never automatic. Pain alone doesn't guarantee wisdom. Countless people go through hardship and emerge hardened instead of softened, bitter instead of wise, closed instead of open. The difference lies in how we meet our challenges, whether we resist them or listen to their lessons, whether we let them shrink us or expand us. Nature gives us a striking metaphor in the life of the butterfly. Most know that butterflies emerge from cocoons, but few understand the radical process inside. The caterpillar doesn't simply grow wings and fly away, it dissolves. Its entire body breaks down into a nutrient soup. Everything it once was must die so that the butterfly can be born. This process, called metamorphosis, is one of nature's most profound teachings about transformation. The caterpillar doesn't choose this dissolution. Forces beyond its control initiate it. And yet, within that collapse, something extraordinary happens. Hidden clusters of cells called imaginal discs, dormant all through the caterpillar's life, suddenly awaken. These cells hold the blueprint for wings, antennae, the very essence of what the butterfly will become. But they can only emerge once the old form has broken down completely. Your hardest experiences work in much the same way. They dissolve the old versions of yourself that have outlived their purpose. Within the breakdown, hidden capacities, resilience, compassion, vision, begin to awake. The very collapse you once feared often becomes the birthplace of your greater self. They break down the old scaffolding you leaned on, the beliefs, assumptions, and illusions that once felt safe but were too small for the vastness of who you're becoming. And in that dismantling, something deeper awakens. Your imaginal discs of wisdom, compassion, resilience, and clarity begin to stir. A woman once told me her story of surviving cancer in her 30s. She described the diagnosis as though her entire life had dissolved overnight. The plans she had made, the future she thought was certain, the identity she carried, all of it collapsed into uncertainty. For months she lived inside what felt like a dark cocoon of medical treatments, fear, and endless questions about life's meaning. But within that dissolution, something else was quietly emerging. She discovered a courage she never knew she possessed. She experienced a depth of love from others that touched her more profoundly than anything in her previous life. She developed a capacity for presence and gratitude that transformed how she experienced even the smallest, most ordinary moments. What seemed like destruction was, in truth, revelation. "I wouldn't choose to go through cancer again," she said, "but I also wouldn't trade the person I became because of it. The illness broke me open in ways nothing else could have. It showed me who I really am." This doesn't mean we should glorify suffering or suggest every pain has a neat silver lining. Some experiences are truly tragic, and it would be cruel to minimize that. Yet even in the deepest darkness, human consciousness has a remarkable capacity to wrest meaning from chaos, to grow from adversity, to touch depths of wisdom unreachable in comfort. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, bore witness to this truth in the most harrowing of circumstances. In the concentration camps, he observed that while people could not control their external conditions, they retained one unshakable freedom, the power to choose their response. Some maintained dignity, some chose compassion, some even found meaning in their suffering. That inner freedom, Frankl wrote, could never be taken away. Buddhism names this the transformation of suffering. Through right understanding, when you see that life's difficulties are not punishments but invitations to grow, everything shifts. Your relationship to adversity softens. Struggle becomes a doorway to discovery. Pain becomes a teacher rather than just an enemy. And each hardship carries within it the potential for awakening if you meet it not only with resistance but with curiosity. This doesn't mean pretending to be grateful for painful experiences while you're still in the middle of them. That would be spiritual bypassing, using lofty ideas to escape the raw truth of difficult emotion. Instead, it's about learning to hold two truths at once. You can acknowledge that something is genuinely painful while also remaining open to what it might be teaching you. You can grieve what you've lost while still staying available to what wants to emerge. This shift begins with the questions you ask yourself in times of struggle. Instead of only asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you might also ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" Instead of focusing solely on how can I make this pain stop, you could explore, how might this challenge be helping me grow? And instead of dwelling on, when will this be over, you could investigate, who am I becoming through this experience? These questions don't replace your natural feelings. It is healthy and human to feel sadness when you lose, anger when you're treated unfairly, and fear when life feels uncertain. But alongside those feelings, you can cultivate awareness, the quiet presence that observes with compassion. That awareness is what transforms raw experience into wisdom. One of the most profound aspects of this transformation is how it equips you to serve others. The struggles you've faced and integrated become wells of compassion and credibility when you meet others in their pain. Your wounds, once healed, turn into wisdom you can offer to someone else who feels lost. This is why many of the most powerful healers, teachers, and guides are those who have walked through deep valleys themselves. A man who battled addiction for years and eventually found recovery later became a counselor to others, walking the same path. "My addiction nearly destroyed me," he reflected, "but my recovery saved not just me but also everyone I've been able to help since. The darkness I went through gave me compassion and credibility I could never have developed otherwise." This is the hidden gift within life's most difficult experiences. The very places that once broke you open can become the very places where you touch and heal the hearts of others. They are not random events scattered through your life, but rather part of a unique curriculum designed to cultivate the qualities that consciousness seeks to express through you. Every challenge you have faced has prepared you to offer something to the world that only you can give. Perhaps now you find yourself in the midst of your own cocoon stage, where something old is dissolving and the new has not yet taken shape. The familiar ways of being no longer serve you, yet what is emerging remains unseen. This in-between space can feel confusing, frightening, or disorienting. But like the butterfly, the dissolution is not destruction, it is preparation. Darkness here is not permanent, but an incubation, and what breaks down is simply making space for something greater to break through. Your scars, whether visible or hidden, are not marks of damage, but proof of your ability to heal, to grow, and to evolve beyond who you once were. Each difficulty you've lived and integrated has added depth to your character, compassion to your heart, and wisdom to your perspective. Just as the caterpillar cannot imagine flight while still crawling on the earth, yet carries the blueprint for wings within it from the very beginning, so too do you already hold the seeds of transformation within you. Whatever challenges you face now are creating the right conditions for new capacities, still unknown to you, to unfold. Every scar tells a story, not only of survival but of transformation, where consciousness met challenge and discovered beauty on the other side of breaking. Your metamorphosis has already begun, so trust the process, honor the dissolution, and prepare to awaken wings you never knew were waiting. To deepen this trust, practice mindfulness. Notice the small space between this word and the next, for in that subtle gap lives pure awareness, the distilled present moment. Most of us rush past these pauses, chasing the echoes of yesterday or the plans of tomorrow, but within these quiet spaces lies everything we have been searching for. Another part of your mind may be caught worrying about things that may never happen, while the only real moment, the present, slips by unnoticed. Buddhism calls this restless state monkey mind, a mind that jumps constantly from branch to branch, unable to settle. Unlike an actual monkey, however, your mind can travel through time, swinging between past regrets and future anxieties, from old resentments to imagined scenarios, and in doing so, it overlooks the richness of what is unfolding right now. To return, bring awareness to your body, feel the support beneath you, notice the temperature of the air against your skin, sense the weight of your clothes, the position of your hands. These sensations have always been here, yet your attention was likely elsewhere. This is the distinction between merely existing in time and truly being present in time. Mindfulness is not about emptying your mind or silencing thoughts, an impossible and unnecessary task. Thoughts are like clouds drifting across the sky of awareness, natural and impermanent, requiring no constant interference. Instead, mindfulness is the gentle art of noticing where your attention has wandered and guiding it back to the immediacy of this moment. It can begin anywhere, with anything. Take eating, for example. Most of us eat distractedly, multitasking with television, phones, or planning our day, shoveling food into our mouths without tasting it, barely aware that we are nourishing ourselves. Yet eating can be a profound doorway into presence. Before your next meal, pause and truly look at your food. Observe its colors, textures, the way light plays across its surface. When you lift your fork or spoon, notice its weight in your hand. As you chew, pay attention to the unfolding flavors on your tongue, the body's natural responses, the flow of salivation, the satisfaction, the subtle rise of nourishment. This practice is not about eating slowly or following nutritional rules, but about inhabiting the act of eating itself. With awareness, food becomes more vibrant, your body naturally signals when it has had enough, and the simple act of feeding yourself transforms into meditation. Walking, too, can open a doorway into mindfulness. So often, walking is treated merely as transportation, a way to move from one place to another, while the mind drifts somewhere else entirely. Yet the Buddha often taught while walking, recognizing that movement itself can support awareness rather than distract from it. The next time you walk, whether to your car, around your neighborhood, or through a store, experiment with presence. Feel your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your steps, the swing of your arms, the way your body naturally balances with each motion. Pay attention to what passes before you. Trees, buildings, people, without getting lost in stories about them. Simply notice, simply walk, simply be. You may find that when walking mindfully, your body settles into a pace that feels nourishing instead of hurried. Your breath deepens, your nervous system calms, and the journey itself becomes a source of peace, not merely a means to an end. Perhaps the most accessible mindfulness practice of all, however, is something you are already doing every moment. Breathing. The breath is always here, always now. It does not belong to the past or the future. It requires no special equipment, no perfect posture, no ideal circumstances. Simply notice it as it is. Feel the air moving through your nose or mouth. Sense the rise and fall of your chest or belly. Follow the full cycle of inhalation, the gentle pause, the exhalation, and the space before the next breath begins. Inevitably, your mind will wander toward sounds, toward thoughts, toward distractions of the day. Yet the moment you notice that wandering, you are already practicing mindfulness. That noticing is the awakening from the trance of mental time travel. With gentleness and without judgment, bring your attention back to your breath. Each return strengthens your capacity for presence. The practice is not about staying perfectly focused, but about returning again and again, like patiently guiding a puppy back to the path. Over time, this simple discipline yields profound benefits. Science shows that regular mindfulness practice reshapes the brain itself, increasing gray matter in areas linked to learning, memory, and emotional regulation, while reducing activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, which softens reactivity to stress. It also strengthens the prefrontal cortex, deepening your ability to make conscious choices rather than react automatically. Yet beyond all measurable neurological change, mindfulness shifts your relationship to life. When you are present, even difficult emotions become workable, and the simple experience of being alive reveals itself as instead of being swept away by anxiety, you can learn to observe it with compassion. Instead of being consumed by anger, you can notice its presence without becoming it. Instead of drowning in sadness, you can feel it fully while still maintaining your essential stability. One woman once described how she discovered mindfulness during a stressful time at work. She felt constantly behind, overwhelmed by deadlines, until someone suggested she take 3 conscious breaths before beginning each new task. This simple practice became a reset button, bringing her back to center and reminding her that she could choose how to meet each moment. This is mindfulness in action, not withdrawing from life, but engaging more deeply with it, not avoiding challenges, but meeting them with clarity and stability, not escaping the present, but uncovering the richness that has always been here. The practice works because presence is your natural state. You don't have to create mindfulness, you only need to uncover it beneath layers of thought, planning, worry, and memory. Awareness is always here, peaceful and available, waiting for you to return. Mindfulness is simply the art of coming home to yourself. You can be mindful while washing dishes, feeling the warm water on the smooth surfaces, or during a conversation, listening fully instead of preparing your reply. You can practice awareness while standing in line, noticing impatience arise without being overtaken by it. Every moment is an invitation to wake up from the trance of automatic living. As Thich Nhat Hanh taught, the present moment is the only time over which we have dominion. No amount of replaying can change the past, and no amount of worrying can guarantee the future. But this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this chance to be aware is completely yours. And if you pause to notice, you'll often find that right now, in this moment, you are okay. Not perfectly happy perhaps, but breathing, alive, aware. Most of our suffering lives in the stories we weave about past or future, not in the raw reality of the present. This does not mean ignoring responsibilities or living carelessly. You can still plan for the future and learn from the past. The difference is whether you use thought as a tool or let thought use you, whether you choose your thoughts or are carried away by them. Mindfulness gives you that choice. It creates a space between you and your mental activity, allowing you to respond consciously instead of reacting automatically. It shows you that you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness that notices them. This recognition is profoundly liberating. And even now, as you read or listen to these words, you are already practicing mindfulness. You are paying attention to what is unfolding in this very moment. Your awareness, present with these ideas, these sounds, this breath, this now. This capacity for presence is not something you need to build from scratch. It is something already within you, waiting to be remembered. The gift of mindfulness is not that it makes life flawless, but that it makes life real. It draws you out of the imagined worlds of past and future and roots you in the living truth of now. And it is here, in this now, that beauty, peace, and possibility have always been waiting. Between this word and the next lies infinite space, and within that space is everything you have been seeking. Not tomorrow, not after you have fixed everything in your life, not when circumstances finally align, but right here, in the magic of this moment. Your mind can act as either a prison or a path to liberation. For the same consciousness that creates suffering also holds the power to transform it into wisdom. The same awareness that clings to stories of victimhood can learn to recognize them as passing weather across the vast open sky of being. This transformation is not a trick or miracle. It is the natural outcome of understanding how consciousness works. Most of your life you may have related to difficult experiences as things that happened to you. Someone hurt your feelings, and you became the wounded person. A plan fell apart, and you became the disappointed person. You lost something important, and you became the grieving person. These reactions are natural, even deeply human, but they are not the whole story. What Buddhism reveals about suffering is striking. Most of our pain does not arise from what happens itself, but from the stories we tell about what happens. It comes from turning temporary experiences into permanent identities, from personalizing what is in truth impersonal. Consider a simple example. When you cut your finger, the physical pain is immediate and real. Your body sends a clear signal to the brain. Injury here. Pay attention. This raw pain has a purpose. It alerts you, protects you, and helps prevent further harm. Yet almost instantly, the mind often adds its own commentary. I'm so clumsy. This always happens to me. Now my whole day is ruined. The original pain is sharp, but clean, while the mental suffering layered on top is optional. The Buddha illustrated this difference with the teaching of the first arrow and the second arrow. Life inevitably strikes us with the first arrow, the unavoidable pains, the losses, the challenges, but we wound ourselves with the second arrow, our resistance, our judgments, our refusal to accept what has already occurred. It is in noticing and releasing that second arrow where freedom begins. The first arrow is unavoidable, it hurts, but the second arrow, the one created by our own resistance and storytelling, is what turns pain into suffering. Learning to distinguish between these two arrows marks the beginning of real transformation. When something difficult arises, you can pause and ask, what is the actual experience here, and what am I adding to it? What is the raw pain, and what is the story I'm weaving around that pain? What is happening right now, and what am I imagining might happen because of this? This kind of inquiry is not about denying your feelings or minimizing what you've been through. It's about cultivating the ability to witness your inner life with clarity, the way you might observe the weather. Clouds drift across the sky and dissolve without ever altering the sky's vastness. In the same way, emotions arise and pass through awareness without diminishing awareness itself. One man described his discovery of this truth after a painful divorce. At first, he was completely identified with being the rejected husband. Every conversation, every thought, every emotion was filtered through that identity, and he drowned in the story of his victimhood. For months, he replayed events, imagined alternate outcomes, and fed resentment and self-pity. Then something shifted. He noticed that he wasn't just the hurt man, he was also the one aware of being hurt. There was a part of him that could watch the pain without being destroyed by it, a witnessing presence that remained intact and compassionate, even as grief and anger moved through. That untouched awareness was not wounded by what had happened. It simply observed, patiently, steadily. This is the awakening Buddhism points toward, not the elimination of hardship, but the recognition that you are larger than any single experience. You are not your thoughts about what happened. You are not your emotions about your circumstances. You are the awareness in which all thoughts and emotions rise and fade away. When this truth is realized, suffering begins to lose its personal sting. The inner dialogue shifts from "why is this happening to me?" to "what is this experience teaching me?" From "how can I make this pain stop?" to "how can I meet this pain with wisdom?" From "what did I do to deserve this?" to "what capacity is this difficulty asking me to develop?" This shift from victim consciousness to student consciousness changes everything. It is the alchemy of consciousness, the transformation of raw pain into the gold of insight, resilience, and compassion. Just as medieval alchemists sought to turn base metals into gold, awareness has the power to transform the raw material of life, even its most painful elements, into spiritual gold. Every hardship, every wound, every uncomfortable emotion can become the very substance from which wisdom is drawn. But this alchemy requires something counterintuitive, a willingness to stay present with difficulty instead of escaping it. Most of us have been conditioned to avoid pain through distraction, numbing, or denial. We reach for our phones when loneliness stirs, bury ourselves in work when anxiety rises, or cast blame when hurt takes root. These strategies may bring temporary relief, but they block the deeper transformation that only emerges through conscious engagement with our struggles. True healing begins when you turn toward pain with the same tenderness you would offer a frightened child, when you stop running from your emotions and instead listen to them. Every feeling, no matter how uncomfortable, carries a message, a piece of guidance about what you need for your growth and well-being. One woman who had battled anxiety for years described her breakthrough in these terms. She had spent decades trying to eradicate her anxiety, treating it as an enemy that was ruining her life. But when she learned to meet it with curiosity rather than fear, everything shifted. She began asking her anxiety what it was trying to protect her from, what it wanted her to notice. By listening instead of fighting, the anxiety no longer controlled her. It became a messenger instead of a monster. This is the great shift from resistance to acceptance, from victimhood to studenthood, from unconscious suffering to conscious transformation. And it happens not through force or striving, but through a gentle revolution in perception. You begin to realize that no matter how intense the storms of experience may be, consciousness itself is never damaged. It remains vast, open, and whole, the clear sky in which every cloud eventually dissolves. Like space that holds storms without being shaken by them, awareness remains untouched, no matter what passes through it. The practice, then, is learning to identify not with the fleeting contents of your experience, but with the spacious awareness that contains them. You are not anxiety. You are the one who notices anxiety. You are not sadness. You are the presence that can hold sadness with compassion. You are not anger. You are the wisdom capable of hearing what anger is trying to say. This does not mean becoming detached or emotionally numb. In fact, the opposite occurs. When you no longer fear your emotions, you can feel them more fully. When you are not fused with your pain, you can respond to it with greater clarity and care. When you realize that all experiences are temporary visitors in the vast house of consciousness, you can welcome them with courage and grace, knowing none of them define who you are. The moment suffering stops being personal is the moment you discover your true nature, not as a victim of circumstance, but as consciousness itself, vast, unshakable, and inherently free. Not as someone broken who needs fixing, but as wholeness itself, only temporarily forgetting its completeness. This recognition does not erase life's challenges. You will still encounter loss, disappointment, and difficulty, but you will meet them from a very different place. No longer as threats to your identity, but as invitations for consciousness to know itself more deeply, not as proof that something is wrong, but as the natural unfolding of existence, flowing uniquely through your life. Buddhist texts describe this as awakening from the dream of separation, the illusion that you are cut off from life, from others, from the intelligence that breathes through all things. When that dream dissolves, what remains is not emptiness but fullness, the recognition that you are not a fragile wave struggling against the ocean, but the ocean itself taking temporary form as a wave. This insight transforms not only how you meet your own suffering, but how you meet the suffering of others. When you see that consciousness is universal, that awareness is shared, compassion becomes the most natural response. The pain of another becomes as real and significant as your own, because the boundary between self and other no longer holds. Even now, as you read these words, notice that awareness is already present. You do not need to create it, achieve it, or earn it. You are it, the very consciousness noticing thoughts, sensations, and emotions in this moment is your true identity. Everything else, every feeling, every story, every experience is just passing content. Your mind can be your prison, trapping you in stories of limitation and separation. But seen clearly, that same mind becomes the doorway to absolute freedom. Not freedom from life, but the freedom to live fully. Not freedom from feeling, but the freedom to feel without being consumed. Not freedom from challenge, but the freedom to meet every challenge as an opportunity for growth and awakening. This transformation is not something distant to be earned or achieved. It is available now, waiting to be remembered. You are not broken, in need of fixing. You are whole, already complete, simply ready to recognize the truth of what you are. The very awareness that observes suffering is itself untouched by suffering, and that awareness is your real nature. In this recognition, pain ceases to be personal and becomes something impersonal, natural, workable, temporary, and even sacred. Another way for consciousness to know itself more deeply. This is the liberation the Buddha pointed to, not an escape from human experience, but an awakening within it. The mind once experienced as a prison becomes a temple. The same mind that seemed the source of suffering reveals itself as a doorway into freedom. This is why we need the storm. Seeds require darkness to grow. Buried beneath the soil, surrounded by what appears like death and emptiness, they undergo a hidden transformation that prepares them for the light. Without that darkness, without the weight of the earth pressing down, without the seeming burial that resembles an ending, they could never become what they are destined to be. Your life follows the same law. Those times that feel like burial, when everything familiar crumbles, when certainty dissolves, when your old way of being no longer works, are not punishments nor mistakes. They are incubation periods, the darkness necessary for the next stage of your becoming. And yet, we resist this cycle with all our strength. We build comfort zones to keep life predictable, safe, and under control. We create routines to shield ourselves from uncertainty, surrounding ourselves with the familiar people, familiar places, familiar patterns of thought. These comfort zones serve a purpose, offering stability and security, but they can quietly harden into prisons that block our growth. Buddhism teaches that real transformation requires what it calls beneficial instability, the gentle disruption that stretches consciousness beyond its current limits. Just as a snake must shed its skin to grow, we too must release outdated versions of ourselves. But unlike the snake, we often resist the shedding, clinging to what is known instead of trusting the process. Reflect for a moment on the times of greatest growth in your life. Were they seasons of ease and comfort, or times of upheaval and challenge? For most, it is in difficulty that the deepest shifts occur, not because suffering is inherently noble, but because disruption breaks open the conditions where transformation can unfold. One woman described how, at 45, she suddenly lost the job she had held for 20 years. "I was terrified," she admitted. "My whole identity was wrapped up in being successful in that career. And yet, what at first appeared like an ending became the fertile ground for a new beginning." Without that old job, she confessed, she no longer knew who she was. For months, she clung to the familiar, sending out applications only for similar positions, desperate to recreate what had been lost. But the doors she tried to open stayed firmly shut. "I fought the change for almost a year," she admitted. "I was angry, resentful, desperate to get back to my comfort zone." Slowly, however, something shifted. She began to see that perhaps the disruption was not her enemy, but her teacher. Perhaps the comfort zone she was so desperate to return to had quietly hardened into a cage. In that uncertain space of not knowing, she turned toward parts of herself she had long abandoned. She explored interest from decades earlier, enrolled in classes, volunteered, and experimented with different ways of living. Eventually, she built her own business, one that awakened joy and meaning in ways her old job never had. Looking back, she reflected, "I would never have had the courage to make that leap if life hadn't pushed me out of my nest. The crisis I thought was destroying me was actually preparing me for the best chapter of my life." This is what Buddhism means when it speaks of crisis as a spiritual invitation. It does not suggest that difficulty is pleasant or easy, but that hardship often hides wisdom about what must shift in our lives. When circumstances force us out of habitual patterns, we are finally able to see those patterns clearly. When the supports we've leaned on fall away, we discover inner resources we never realized we carried. Every breakdown carries within it the seed of a breakthrough. This isn't wishful thinking or a bypassing of genuine pain. It is recognition of a law that nature itself reveals. Take the forest, for example. When lightning ignites a fire and flames roar through woodland, it looks like nothing but devastation. Ancient trees collapsing into ash, decades of growth erased in hours. And yet ecologists understand something the casual observer misses. Many forests need fire to remain alive. Some seeds can only germinate after exposure to intense heat. The ashes left behind enrich the soil with nutrients that sustain new life. The clearing of old growth allows light to reach the forest floor, creating space for new species to emerge. What seemed to be ruin was in truth regeneration. The forest rises from its trial more diverse, resilient, and vibrant than before. So it is with your personal storms. The ending of a relationship can open the space for self-love and eventually deeper partnership. An illness that halts the momentum of your life can reveal what truly matters. Financial loss that strips away outer security can uncover the inner wealth you had forgotten. The heartbreak that shatters you can soften your heart, allowing more love to flow through you than you thought possible. But transformation is not guaranteed. Just as fire can either regenerate or destroy depending on conditions, life's storms can lead to growth or collapse, depending on how we meet them. The difference lies in whether we resist disruption or work with it. Buddhism offers a path forward. First, recognize that crisis signals the death of an old way of being that no longer serves you. Second, resist the reflex. Rebuild exactly what has been lost. Third, use the space created by disruption to explore new possibilities, so that out of ashes, something new, vital, and more aligned with your true nature can take root. Fourth, trust that something wants to emerge through you, even if its shape is not yet visible. One man described this through what he called his dark night of the business owner. After 15 years of building a successful company, everything began unraveling at once. Trusted employees left, major clients pulled out, financial pressures mounted, and he felt as though everything he had worked for was collapsing. At first, he resisted with frantic energy, working longer hours, taking bigger risks, and clinging desperately to old strategies. But the harder he pushed, the worse things became, until he had no choice but to slow down and face what was happening. In that stillness, he recognized that he had been running his business from fear and ego, losing touch with the original purpose that had inspired him to serve something meaningful. Instead of salvaging the old model, he allowed it to dissolve and transform. He released employees who were no longer aligned with his values. He shifted his focus from unchecked growth to sustainable impact. He rebuilt not from panic, but from purpose. The company that emerged was smaller, but stronger, leaner, but more authentic, grounded not in fear, but in integrity. The storm had stripped away everything inessential, leaving only what was true. This is the hidden gift within life's upheavals. Their power to clear out what is false, unsustainable, and misaligned, forcing us to see the difference between what we think we need and what we actually need, between what we imagine we want and what truly fulfills us, between who we think we should be and who we authentically are. The process is never comfortable. Seeds don't rejoice in being buried, forests don't welcome fire, and butterflies don't delight in dissolving inside their cocoons. And yet, these experiences of apparent destruction are not obstacles to transformation. They are transformation. When you find yourself in the middle of your own storm, the wind may be too fierce, the rain too blinding, the thunder too overwhelming for you to perceive its deeper purpose. In such moments, the practice is not to force yourself into gratitude or to pretend the pain doesn't exist. The practice is simply to trust that the storm will pass, and when it does, the ground it leaves behind will be fertile in ways you could not yet imagine. Sometimes the transformation is immediate and unmistakable. Other times, it takes months or even years to see what was being dismantled and what was being prepared for. But when you look back honestly at the great disruptions of your life, you may notice that each one, no matter how painful, nudged you toward greater authenticity, deeper wisdom, and more genuine fulfillment. The storm, though fierce, often leaves behind a sky more open and a path more true. Right now, you may find yourself in the middle of your own storm. Something in your life may be unraveling, shifting in ways you didn't expect, or spinning completely out of your control. If so, remember the seed that grows in darkness, the forest renewed by fire, the butterfly dissolving before it takes flight. What feels like an ending may actually be the beginning you've been waiting for. What feels like collapse may be clearing the ground for the breakthrough that will define your next chapter. The storm is not your enemy. It is life's way of making space for growth. Trust this process. Lean into the unknown. Allow the old to fall away so that what longs to emerge can finally take shape. Every breakdown is setting the stage for a breakthrough. The darkness surrounding you now is the fertile soil in which your new life is quietly forming. And when the time comes, you'll see that this storm was not an interruption, but a preparation for what was always meant to arrive. This is the essence of Dharma, an intelligence that runs through everything, not an intellect that calculates and controls, but a deeper wisdom that orchestrates the unfolding of life itself. It is the same force that signals flowers when to bloom and rivers which way to flow. It is the same intelligence that keeps your heart beating without effort and heals your wounds while you sleep. Buddhism calls this natural order Dharma. You've likely felt its presence in moments of perfect alignment, when the right person appeared at just the right time, when opportunities opened precisely as you were ready for them, when what seemed like terrible timing revealed itself as perfect timing in disguise. These aren't accidents, they are glimpses of Dharma at work. Most of us, however, live as though we are separate from this natural order. We try to force life to bend to our will, exhausting ourselves by pushing against closed doors instead of walking through the ones opening before us. We fight life's timing, insisting that everything unfold according to our plans, swimming upstream even as the current is carrying us exactly where we need to go. But whether or not we recognize it, Dharma is always operating. Like gravity, it is a fundamental law that shapes reality regardless of belief. The difference lies in whether we resist it or learn to cooperate with it, whether we remain blind to its patterns or awaken to its guidance. Understanding Dharma begins with simply observing the natural world. An apple tree doesn't force itself to produce fruit in winter. It abides by rhythms that align with the seasons, offering its gifts when the conditions are right. A river doesn't strain to reach the ocean. It follows the path of least resistance, knowing that every drop will eventually return home. We too are part of this same order, yet we've forgotten how to listen. We've been conditioned to rely only on planning, strategy, and analysis. While these tools are useful, they are not the whole picture. Dharma points to another kind of knowing, a deeper wisdom that exists beyond the rational mind. An intuitive sense of timing arises when you begin to recognize Dharma at work, the knowing of when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to hold on and when to let go. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. Dharma is not about sitting back and waiting for life to unfold without your participation. It is about attuning yourself to the natural rhythms of existence and aligning your actions with them, much like a skilled sailor reads the winds and adjusts the sails rather than fighting the sea. A gardener lives by this principle as well. She knows there is a time for planting and a time for harvesting, a time for watering and a time for letting the soil rest. She doesn't force growth out of season, knowing that doing so would only weaken the plants. Instead, she works with the seasons, and her garden flourishes because she honors their timing. Your own life follows similar cycles. There are seasons of expansion and seasons of consolidation, moments when everything flows effortlessly, and moments when obstacles rise at every turn. Sometimes opportunities multiply without effort, while other times every door seems locked. Recognizing these rhythms saves you from unnecessary struggle. When you find yourself pushing hard against constant resistance, it may be Dharma signaling that it isn't the right time for that particular effort. When doors open before you knock, when synchronicities abound and solutions appear almost effortlessly, That is Dharma showing you that you are aligned with the natural flow. These are not mystical signs requiring special interpretation, but feedback from the same intelligence that orchestrates all of existence. One woman shared her story of trying to start a business for 3 years. Every step was a battle. Funding collapsed. Partnerships dissolved. Technical issues arose one after another. I thought persistence was a virtue, so I kept pushing, she admitted, but I was exhausted and going nowhere. Finally, she made a counterintuitive choice. She stopped forcing things, not to abandon her vision, but to listen more closely to life's feedback. She decided to trust that if her business was meant to exist, the path would unfold more naturally. Within months, everything shifted. A chance conversation led to funding, technical help arrived through unexpected connections, and the venture that once felt impossible suddenly felt inevitable. It was the same idea, the same passion, the same skills, she reflected, but completely different timing. I realized Dharma isn't just about what you do, it's about when you do it. This understanding challenges the cultural conditioning that glorifies constant action and immediate results. We're taught to believe that waiting equals failure, that delay is wasted time, but Dharma operates on a scale far larger than our impatience. It considers connections we cannot see, factors beyond our awareness, and preparations not yet complete. What looks like a delay may actually be protection. The relationship that falls apart may be clearing space for a deeper love. The job you don't get may lead to a role that aligns more profoundly with your purpose. The move that is postponed may be the universe waiting for circumstances to line up more perfectly than you could ever arrange on your own. What feels like life working against you may actually be life working for you in ways your mind cannot yet grasp. Trusting this larger pattern calls for what Buddhism describes as beginner's mind, a way of meeting each moment with openness and curiosity rather than rigid expectations. Instead of demanding that life conform to your schedule, you become curious about life's timing. Instead of forcing predetermined outcomes, you stay receptive to possibilities you may never have imagined. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition or dismissing your goals, but holding them lightly, allowing them to breathe, and remaining attentive to how they naturally want to unfold. Like a jazz musician who knows the melody yet welcomes improvisation, you can move with both intention and flexibility, maintaining direction while allowing creative adaptation. This practice requires noticing subtle signals most people overlook. Pay attention to when your energy feels expansive versus when it contracts around certain choices. Observe when opportunities multiply effortlessly versus when obstacles appear at every turn. Notice the quality of your sleep, your dreams, and the sense of flow that accompanies certain directions in life. Often, your body and intuition recognize Dharma before your rational mind does. At the same time, wisdom lies in distinguishing between resistance that arises from ego and fear, and resistance that signals misalignment with natural flow. When difficulties arise because you're leaving your comfort zone or breaking old patterns, the moment calls for courage and persistence. But when challenges multiply because you are pushing against the current of life itself, the moment calls for patience, trust, and adaptability. Buddhist teachers often describe this balance as effortless effort, action that is both purposeful and relaxed, decisive yet yielding. It's not a contradiction but an expression of true alignment, where personal will harmonizes with natural law. In this state, your actions feel both vital and effortless, carrying a sense of inevitability, as if they could not unfold any other way. Cultivating this alignment doesn't require anything grand. Begin with simple daily practices. Pause before making important decisions, and sense into different options, rather than merely analyzing them. Notice which choices feel expansive and which feel constricted. Pay attention to synchronicities, to the images in your dreams, to the quiet wisdom that arises from stillness. as much as to the conclusions of logical thought. Sometimes Dharma will call you to act swiftly, even when certainty is lacking. At other times it will ask you to wait, even when waiting feels unbearable. The intelligence that guides all things knows when the conditions are truly ripe. Your task is not to control that timing, but to notice it, trust it, and respond with grace. This recognition shifts your relationship with uncertainty. Rather than perceiving the unknown as threatening, you begin to sense it as fertile ground, alive with possibility. Instead of needing to see the entire plan before taking the first step, you grow comfortable moving forward with just enough clarity to guide the next foot. This is the way all genuine growth unfolds, one small increment at a time, carried by an intelligence greater than individual understanding. Perhaps in your own life right now, something is trying to unfold according to Dharma's timing, rather than your own. It may be a creative project that resists being confined to your original vision, a relationship that is ripening more slowly than you'd prefer, a career transition that stretches out longer than you anticipated, or a healing process that reveals itself in layers, rather than all at once. Can you sense the quiet wisdom working beneath the surface of these experiences? Can you feel how forcing or rushing could disrupt what is meant to emerge naturally? Can you trust that the same intelligence that orchestrates the galaxies and the turning of seasons is also at work shaping the circumstances of your life? This is Dharma, not fate or predestination, but the natural order that arises when consciousness and action move in harmony with deeper currents of existence. When you learn to read these currents and move with them, rather than against them, life becomes less of a battle and more of a dance. You still participate fully, but from a place of cooperation rather than resistance. The intelligence is always present, flowing through everything, orchestrating the unfolding of what longs to emerge. Your invitation is simply to notice it, trust it, and allow it to guide you home. The beautiful illusion of control reminds us of this truth through an old parable. A king once wished to cover his entire kingdom in leather so that no subject would ever need to walk on rough ground. He ordered his advisors to begin the massive undertaking, a task that would slaughter thousands of cows, drain the treasury, and take years of exhausting labor to cover every road, every path, every stretch of earth with soft leather. But one wise advisor approached him with a gentler idea. "Your Majesty, instead of covering the whole kingdom, why not simply cover your feet?" And thus, the first shoes were born. This simple tale reveals something profound about the human condition. We exhaust ourselves trying to make the world soft and accommodating, when the true work is learning to move skillfully through whatever terrain life places before us. We attempt to control circumstances that will always remain beyond our grasp, while overlooking the one power we truly hold, our response to what happens. The illusion of control is one of the mind's most seductive and exhausting tricks. It tells us that if we plan enough, work hard enough, or worry enough, we can guarantee specific outcomes. It whispers that safety comes from managing every variable, predicting every possibility, and preparing for every contingency. Yet this promise is impossible to fulfill, and the effort to chase it leaves us anxious, drained, and perpetually defeated. Buddhism teaches that this desire to control arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of existence. We imagine ourselves as isolated individuals, navigating a hostile universe that must be conquered, when in truth we are threads in an interconnected web where everything influences everything else in ways too intricate to ever fully manage. Still, we persist in this exhausting effort. We try to control our children's choices to ensure their happiness, to manage our partner's behavior to secure our relationships, to control markets, weather, opinions, even our own aging process. We live in a constant state of vigilance, scanning for threats and preparing for problems that may never arise. Ironically, this very hypervigilance often creates the difficulties we sought to prevent. When we try to control a conversation, people become defensive and communication collapses. When we force a relationship outcome, we create tension that drives others away. When we grip too tightly to a business plan, we miss opportunities that require flexibility and adaptation. One woman described her shift from what she called a control addict to someone who could finally dance with uncertainty. "I used to have backup plans for my backup plans," she laughed, recalling countless nights spent rehearsing every possible scenario. "I thought I was being responsible, but I was actually torturing myself with imaginary problems." Her turning point came during a family crisis when her father suffered a stroke, and every careful plan she'd made instantly became irrelevant. "The only thing that mattered," she said, "was showing up with love and presence. I realized I had been so busy trying to control the future that I was missing the present entirely." This is the paradox of surrender. By loosening our grip on how life should unfold, we become more capable of responding to what actually unfolds. By releasing our obsession with outcomes, we begin to notice possibilities that were always there, but hidden by tunnel vision. Nature mirrors this wisdom through the river, a teacher that flows with life, rather than trying to control it. The river does not demand the landscape bend to its will. It adapts, curves, and weaves, finding its way to the ocean with ease and inevitability. In the same way, we too can learn to move with life's currents instead of exhausting ourselves, fighting against them. Water never fights its environment. It moves with it, adapting to whatever it encounters. When faced with a boulder, it does not waste energy trying to push the rock aside, but simply finds another path, flowing around, over, or beneath it. With time, its gentle persistence shapes even the hardest stone. Yet water never intends to change the boulder. It only follows its nature, which is to flow toward its destination while adjusting to the terrain along the way. This is the essence of effortless power: progress without struggle, influence without force, transformation without violence. We can live the same way, moving fluidly through challenges rather than resisting them. When obstacles appear, instead of immediately plotting how to remove them, we can pause and ask what they are here to teach us. Rather than forcing locked doors, we can notice which windows are opening. Rather than demanding life follow our timeline, we can align ourselves with the timeline life is already unfolding. This does not mean passivity or abandoning our goals. Rivers carve valleys and shape landscapes, not through rigidity, but through persistent adaptability. In the same way, we can pursue our dreams with steady dedication while remaining flexible about the form they take. The practice begins by distinguishing between what we can influence and what we cannot. We can shape our actions, choices, attitudes, and effort, but we cannot control other people's reactions, economic tides, natural events, or the countless variables woven into daily life. Wisdom lies in directing energy where it can truly matter. When we notice ourselves trying to command the uncontrollable, we can pause and ask, what if I stopped trying to steer the ocean? What if, instead of exhausting ourselves, fighting against currents too strong to resist, we learn to read them and let them carry us where we're meant to go? What if the very thing we are resisting contains the wisdom needed to move forward? A businessman once shared how he learned this lesson during an economic downturn. For months, he forced his old business model to survive in a market that had completely changed. "I was like someone paddling upstream against a flood," he admitted. "The harder I worked, the further back I drifted." His shift came when he stopped fighting the current and began listening to what it was teaching him. The market was revealing that his old approach had run its course. By releasing what no longer worked and exploring what wanted to emerge, he discovered a new path. Within 2 years, he had built a business that was smaller, but far more sustainable than the one he had lost. The very flood he once resisted had carried him into a stronger, wiser chapter of his life. This is the gift hidden within uncertainty. It compels you to develop capacities you never realized you had. When you can't control outcomes, you discover trust in your ability to meet whatever comes. When the familiar supports fall away, you uncover inner resources that had always been present but never called upon. When carefully crafted plans dissolve, you cultivate the improvisational skill that makes resilience genuine rather than theoretical. Buddhist practice offers practical tools for this flexibility. Meditation teaches you to watch thoughts and emotions without being dominated by them. Mindfulness reveals when you are clinging too tightly to expectation. These practices nurture equanimity, the steady center that remains balanced, no matter what circumstances arise. Perhaps the most liberating practice, though, is remembering that you are not separate from the great flow of existence. You are not a fragile, isolated being, struggling against a hostile universe. You are woven into the very intelligence that beats your heart, shifts the tides, and turns the seasons. This realization dissolves the illusion that safety comes from controlling external events. True safety emerges from trusting your inherent capacity to respond wisely. Peace doesn't come from ensuring everything aligns with your plans, but from knowing you can grow and find meaning in whatever unfolds. The king in the old parable eventually learned that wearing shoes was wiser than covering his kingdom in leather. He discovered that adapting himself was infinitely more effective than reshaping the world to his demands. You are invited to make the same discovery. Somewhere in your life, you may be gripping too tightly, trying to bend circumstances to your will. Maybe you're fighting the current instead of learning to navigate it, insisting on a particular outcome while missing what's trying to emerge. What would happen if you loosened your grip even slightly? What if you stopped trying to steer the ocean and instead learned to sail? What if you trusted that the same force that guides rivers and grows forests knows how to carry your life toward its highest expression? The illusion of control dissolves the moment you realize you were never separate from what you were struggling to control. You are the current, the flow, the intelligence itself. And when you stop resisting this truth and begin to embody it, life becomes lighter, freer, and infinitely more magical. Everything is connected. The stranger who smiled at you this morning changed the trajectory of your day in ways you may never fully grasp. That single gesture softened your guard, reminded you that kindness still exists in unexpected places, and shifted your mood. Because of it, you were more patient with your coworker who carried that warmth home and treated her children with gentleness. The children slept more peacefully, woke up lighter, and touched others with their joy. One smile rippled outward, setting in motion a wave of well-being across an entire web of lives. This is the truth Buddhism has pointed to for over 2 millennia. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is interwoven. Every thought, word, and action sends out ripples that shape the fabric of existence in ways far beyond what we can see. Every thought you think, every word you speak, and every action you take sends ripples across an interconnected web of consciousness that embraces every living being. We are not isolated individuals struggling alone in a vast, indifferent universe. We are threads woven into the same tapestry, each one essential to the strength and beauty of the whole. The Buddha called this truth dependent origination, the insight that everything arises in relationship to everything else. Your breath depends on plants releasing oxygen. Your food depends on soil, rain, and countless unseen hands that aid it to your table. Even your thoughts rely on language taught by others, experiences shared within a community, and wisdom carried forward through generations. Even the sense of self exists only in relation to what appears as not self. But this interconnectedness is not only physical, it extends into consciousness itself. Awareness seems to flow through us, like water through linked vessels. When you heal something within yourself, you are also healing the collective human experience. Every time you transform fear into love, anger into compassion, or despair into hope, you are not only reshaping your own inner world, but also participating in the evolution of consciousness as a whole. Consider someone in your life who radiates deep peace. Simply being near them can settle your mind, deepen your breath, and center your spirit, even without words or deliberate action. This is proof of how powerfully we affect each other through the quality of our inner state. The same principle also works in the opposite direction. When you're anxious, that unease spreads to those around you. When you're angry, the atmosphere grows heavy with conflict. This recognition is not an invitation to blame yourself for difficult emotions, but a call to honor the responsibility that comes with understanding how interconnected we truly are. One mother once described how her healing journey transformed her entire family. She said, "I spent years in therapy working through childhood trauma. I thought I was just fixing my own problems, but as I became more peaceful inside, everything shifted. My husband no longer felt he had to walk on eggshells around me. My children became more confident and expressive. She hadn't tried to change anyone else, yet her transformation created space for others to grow alongside her." This is the essence of what Buddhism means when it teaches that healing the self is inseparable from healing the world. When Buddhism teaches that all beings are interconnected, it means that your healing becomes healing for everyone you meet. Your peace contributes to peace in the world. Your awakening ripples outward, participating in the awakening of human consciousness itself. The inner work you do is never selfish. It is one of the most generous offerings you can make to existence. Modern science echoes this truth through the idea of the butterfly effect, the understanding that a small change in one part of a system can create vast effects elsewhere. Just as a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil might contribute to a tornado in Texas through a complex chain of interactions, your single act of patience with a difficult person might prevent an argument that would have spread negativity through many lives. But consciousness operates on an even subtler plane than weather systems. When you genuinely forgive someone who has hurt you, you're not only freeing yourself from resentment, you're strengthening a field of forgiveness that makes it easier for others to forgive. When you choose love over fear in a challenging situation, you reinforce the pattern of love within the collective mind. When you find peace in the midst of chaos, you make that possibility more available to everyone around you. This shifts the way you view personal growth and spiritual practice. You're not working in isolation. You're participating in the healing and evolution of the entire human family. Every time you sit in meditation, you're contributing to peace on earth. Every moment of mindfulness expands the field of awareness. Every act of kindness strengthens the invisible web of love, connecting all beings. One meditation teacher reflected on this after years of practice. At first, he thought meditation was selfish, taking time away from helping others to sit quietly alone. But as his practice deepened, he noticed how differently people responded to him. Strangers would strike up conversations, conflicts resolved with less effort, relationships softened in unexpected ways. He realized that cultivating inner peace was, in fact, one of the most effective ways to serve the world. And just as your work ripples outward, you are also constantly receiving the benefits of the healing work others are doing. Every person who chooses compassion over judgment makes it easier for you to act with compassion. Every individual who transforms trauma into wisdom contributes to your own capacity to heal. Every being who awakens to their true nature strengthens the possibility of awakening for everyone. Indigenous traditions have long understood this principle. Many Native American teachings encourage making decisions with 7 generations in mind. African Ubuntu philosophy proclaims, "I am because we are." Buddhist practice includes prayers for the welfare of all sentient beings. These are not abstract ideals. They reflect the fundamental truth that individual and collective well-being are inseparable. Practically, this means approaching daily life with awareness and intention. When you're stuck in traffic, you can choose to be a point of calm instead of feeding collective frustration. When someone is rude, you can respond with patience, breaking the cycle of negativity rather than continuing it. This doesn't mean taking on responsibility for other people's emotions or trying to fix their lives. Boundaries remain essential for genuine well-being. But it does mean remembering that your inner state is never merely personal. It always contributes to the collective field of consciousness we share. Sometimes people resist the teaching of interconnectedness because it seems overwhelming. If everything I do affects everyone else, how can I ever relax? They ask. But true understanding of this principle actually relieves pressure rather than adding to it. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders because you are not separate from the world. You are part of an intelligence infinitely larger than your individual mind, supported by the very web you are supporting. The love you give inevitably returns to you, often through unexpected sources. The healing you offer contributes to your own healing through mysterious channels. The peace you cultivate flows back to you, multiplied, carried along invisible threads of connection. Even now, as you take in these words, you're participating in this living web. Your attention is joining with the attention of countless others, seeking wisdom, healing, and growth. Your willingness to question, to learn, and to evolve strengthens the collective movement toward awakening. We are all threads woven into the same tapestry of existence. When one thread grows stronger, more beautiful, more aligned with its essence, the entire fabric becomes more radiant. When a thread frays, the weakness is felt by all. Yet when threads support one another, remembering their unity while honoring their unique colors and textures, something magnificent emerges, a creation none could weave alone. You are one of these threads, unique, essential, inseparable from the grand design. Your healing ripples into the world. Your peace nurtures collective peace. Your love multiplies itself beyond measure in ways you may never see but can always trust. The stranger who smiled at you this morning was not just a person, but consciousness recognizing itself. And when you smile at the next stranger, you are continuing that eternal dialogue, the endless conversation of love, discovering itself through infinite forms, forever connected, forever one. Consider too how inner changes can create outer miracles. A woman once shared that she changed nothing in her life. Same job, same apartment, same daily routine, same people around her, yet everything transformed. Within months, her difficult boss became unexpectedly supportive. New opportunities emerged as if from nowhere, and strained relationships began to heal. I didn't change anything, she marveled, but everything changed. She had touched upon one of Buddhism's most profound truths, that reality is not a fixed, objective stage we must adapt to or resist, but a living mirror reflecting the quality of awareness we bring. When you transform your inner landscape, the outer landscape responds in ways that often feel nothing short of miraculous. Most of us have it backwards, believing we must force the external world to shift before we can feel peace, joy, or freedom, when in truth, it begins within. We often believe we must change our circumstances in order to feel differently, telling ourselves that once we secure the right job, relationship, or amount of money, happiness and peace will naturally follow. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. When you cultivate happiness and peace within, your external circumstances begin to align in ways that reflect and support that inner state. This is not wishful thinking, but a recognition of how consciousness truly works. Your perception shapes your reality more powerfully then reality shapes your perception. Look through fearful eyes, and you will see threats everywhere, unconsciously creating more situations to confirm your fear. Look through grateful eyes, and you will see abundance everywhere, unconsciously creating more to appreciate. The Buddha taught that the mind is the forerunner of all experience. Before anything manifests in the external world, it first arises in consciousness as an expectation, a belief, or a way of seeing. These inner formations influence how you move through the world, what you notice, what opportunities you are open to, and how people respond to your energy. Change the inner, and the outer must shift as well. A man once shared his experience of transforming a hostile work environment. Through this principle, he had been convinced that colleagues were sabotaging his projects. So he went to work each day, defensive and suspicious, and naturally, he found evidence of betrayal everywhere. Then he began practicing what he called assumption reversal. Instead of assuming bad intentions, he chose to assume good intentions, hindered only by poor communication. Instead of seeking evidence of sabotage, he looked for signs of support. Instead of engaging defensively, he approached with curiosity and goodwill. Nothing changed except my lens, he reflected, but within weeks, everything was different. The same people who had seemed hostile began to include him, projects found due support, and the entire atmosphere shifted. This is what Buddhism calls the mirror principle. Reality reflects the energy you project into it. Like a flawless mirror, the world does not judge, it simply shows you what you are being, not what you are pretending to be. If fear is alive within you, even behind a mask of confidence, the world responds to fear. If love is alive within you, even amid challenge, the world responds to love. The solution, then, is not to fight with the mirror, but to change what you present to it. Transform your inner state, and your outer world will inevitably shift to match it. This principle works because consciousness is not confined to the individual mind. It is a field extending beyond your body, subtly but powerfully influencing everyone and everything around you. When you genuinely embody peace, you generate a field of peace others can feel and respond to. When you authentically embody love, you create a field of love that naturally draws loving responses. In this way, the most profound changes in your life do not begin with controlling external circumstances, but with transforming the quality of awareness you carry into each moment. A teacher discovered this truth when she stopped trying to control her students and instead began embodying the calm attention she wanted them to show. For years, she fought against disruptive behavior, describing her classroom as a battlefield that left her drained at the end of every day. Then she realized that her own internal agitation was fueling the chaos. She began each morning with meditation, arriving at school centered and peaceful. Rather than bracing for conflict, she held an intention for learning and connection. Rather than viewing her students as problems to be managed, she saw them as young humans, seeking understanding. The shift was immediate and profound. The same students who had once been disruptive became engaged and cooperative. This shift in perspective transforms how you approach challenges in your own life. Instead of asking, "How can I change this situation?" you begin asking, "How can I change my relationship to this situation?" Instead of fixating on what's wrong with the world, you turn inward to discover what in yourself is calling for healing or development. This is the heart of Gandhi's teaching, to be the change you wish to see in the world. He was not speaking in vague metaphor, but describing a practical spiritual technology. When you embody the qualities you long for, you generate a magnetic field that draws those very experiences to you. A woman who had struggled with loneliness stumbled upon this principle by accident. She was tired of waiting for invitations, so out of desperation she began organizing gatherings herself. To her surprise, something shifted within her. The simple act of creating connection for others awakened a sense of connection inside her. Once she stopped grasping for companionship, it began flowing naturally. Soon people were reaching out, inviting her places, seeking her presence. She had become the connected person she once longed to be, and the world mirrored that back. This principle applies universally. If you want more love, become more loving. If you want more peace, become more peaceful. If you want more abundance, become more generous. If you want more trust, become more trustworthy. The external world cannot help but reflect what you genuinely embody, but this requires deep honesty. You cannot fake your way into transformation, because the mirror reflects your true inner state, not the persona you perform. If you try to project confidence while harboring insecurity, the world responds to the insecurity. Real change comes through radical responsibility for your experience. By tending to your inner state with sincerity, you transform not only your own life, but also the lives around you. When something in your outer world isn't working, the invitation is not to rush into blame or resistance, but to pause and ask, what within me might be shaping or attracting this experience? What old belief or pattern could be asking for healing? What quality do I need to cultivate to meet this situation differently? This isn't about self-blame or denying that some circumstances require direct external action. It's about recognizing that the consciousness you bring to any action profoundly shapes its effectiveness. Change rooted in love and wisdom creates transformation that endures. A simple shift in perception, asking, what would change if I saw this differently, can turn even the most difficult moments into opportunities for growth. Perhaps the difficult person in your life is there to teach patience. Perhaps financial struggles are an invitation to trust in abundance that transcends possessions. Perhaps illness is asking you to slow down, nurture yourself, and truly be present. These aren't mere exercises in positive thinking. They are doorways into discovering the deeper purpose woven into each experience. When you align with that purpose, when you allow challenges to become catalysts for embodying higher qualities, the outer situation often transforms in ways that feel miraculous, not because you forced it, but because you became the kind of person for whom such miracles arise naturally. One woman learned this by changing nothing in her outer life, yet everything in her heart. She stopped waiting for the world to shift and began shifting the consciousness she brought into the world. To her astonishment, reality responded as though it had been waiting for her all along, malleable, responsive, alive to love and awareness. This same miracle is available to you. It does not come from control or manipulation, but through the gentle and steady transformation of your inner landscape. When your heart changes, the world must change to match it. This is not fantasy, but the natural law of consciousness expressing itself through form. Your outer life is always reflecting the beauty or the turbulence within. The true miracle is not that change is possible. It is that change becomes inevitable the moment you align with the truth of who you are. And in this unfolding, the people in your story play essential roles. Each person, those who uplift, those who challenge, those who remain for decades, and those who pass briefly, enters your life through a mysterious magnetism of consciousness, drawn by what Buddhism calls karmic affinity. These resonances are not about rigid predestination, nor do they mean harmful dynamics should be endured. They are about the intelligence of life, bringing together the very experiences capable of catalyzing growth. Consider the relationships that shaped you most deeply, the one who believed in you when you couldn't believe in yourself, the friend who showed up in your darkest hour, the mentor who awakened potential you hadn't yet seen, the partner who loved you through your most unlovable moments. These encounters were not accidents but reflections of consciousness recognizing itself, offering what was needed for your evolution. Relationships serve different purposes, some to anchor you, some to awaken you, some to break you open, some to teach you to let go. And when you understand this, connection and separation both become part of the same sacred unfolding. Some people enter your life only for a season, arriving with gifts or lessons that serve a particular purpose before moving on, while others remain for years or decades, growing and evolving alongside you, and still others may appear briefly, yet leave a profound and lasting impact. Each duration, whether fleeting or enduring, is perfectly suited to the role it plays in your journey. One woman discovered this truth when a close friendship ended unexpectedly. At first, she was devastated, replaying every detail in her mind, wondering what she had done wrong and how she might fix it. But over time, her reflection shifted. She realized that this friend had entered her life precisely when she most needed encouragement to pursue her creativity. For 3 years, her friend had been her biggest supporter, cheering her on and giving her the confidence to take her art seriously. By the time the friendship naturally dissolved, she no longer needed external validation. She had internalized the belief in herself that her friend had helped nurture. With this perspective, she stopped mourning the loss and began to feel grateful for the gift the friendship had given her. Such a shift in perspective transforms how we experience the ebb and flow of relationships. Instead of clinging desperately to connections that want to evolve or end, we can appreciate the role each person has played in our growth and trust that when one chapter closes, space opens for new connections aligned with the next stage of our journey. Yet perhaps the most difficult lesson in relationships involves those who have caused us pain. Buddhism teaches that even these individuals can, in a certain light, be seen as teachers, but this must be approached with great care to avoid misinterpretation. It does not mean that abuse is acceptable, nor does it place responsibility for suffering onto the victim. Rather, it points to the mind's remarkable ability to extract wisdom and strength even from painful experiences. A man who grew up with an alcoholic father shared how he eventually came to understand this. For years, he was consumed with anger and resentment, feeling robbed of a normal childhood and deeply scarred by his father's unpredictability and absence. At first, the idea that his father could somehow be considered a teacher felt dismissive of the real trauma he endured. But through years of therapy and Buddhist practice, he began to see another dimension of his experience. Living in that environment had made him acutely sensitive to the emotions of others. He could walk into a room and immediately sense when someone was struggling, and he knew how to offer just the right kind of support. The hypervigilance that had once been his survival mechanism became a profound source of empathy in adulthood. He eventually became a counselor, guiding others through the pain of family addiction. This doesn't make what happened okay, he emphasized. I still had to work for years to heal the trauma, but recognizing how the experience shaped my capacity for compassion helped me transform my pain into purpose. This is the delicate wisdom Buddhism offers about difficult relationships. Not that suffering is good or necessary, but that consciousness has the ability to transform even painful experiences into wisdom when met with skillful awareness. The key lies in timing, in having the right support, and in honoring the need for real healing and clear boundaries. Sometimes the lesson isn't about cultivating positive qualities, but about discovering what you will no longer tolerate. The person who continually breaks promises teaches you the importance of reliability. The one who disregards your boundaries shows you why those boundaries are essential. The relationship that drains your energy reveals by contrast what true nourishment in connection feels like. Alongside these hard-won lessons, Buddhism also speaks of spiritual friends, relationships consciously oriented toward mutual awakening. These are the rare and precious bonds where someone sees your highest potential and lovingly calls you toward it, supporting your growth even if it means you outgrow old dynamics. They love you enough to speak difficult truths with kindness, celebrate your victories without jealousy, and hold space for your struggles without trying to fix you. Such connections are to be treasured, and when you embody this kind of friendship for others, you offer one of life's greatest gifts. Equally powerful is the practice of observing your own recurring patterns across relationships. Do you consistently attract people who need rescuing? Do you give more than you receive? Do you silence or abandon yourself to keep others comfortable? Do you pull away when intimacy grows too deep? These patterns reveal areas within you that are asking for healing and integration. One woman noticed she was always the helper in friendships, the one people called during crisis. Though it made her feel useful and needed, she was left exhausted and unseen. Reflection revealed the root in her childhood, where her sense of worth came from helping her struggling mother. With awareness, she began choosing more balanced connections, where support could flow both ways. Gratitude for all encounters does not mean pretending harmful relationships were wonderful. Rather, it means recognizing that every connection, pleasant, difficult, or somewhere in between, has contributed to your understanding of yourself and others. The one who betrayed you taught discernment. The one who loved you unconditionally revealed what is possible. The friend who grew in another direction reminded you that change is natural. Even now, the people in your life are teachers. The colleague who irritates you may be helping you practice patience or strengthen boundaries. The family member who triggers you may be reflecting an unhealed part of yourself. And the person who inspires you is likely showing you the very qualities you're ready to grow into. Buddhism reminds us that we are all walking each other home, and every interaction holds the potential for mutual awakening, healing, and growth. When you see others as fellow travelers, rather than obstacles or objects, relationships shift into sacred encounters instead of sources of drama. Some companions remain in your story for entire chapters, while others appear for just a single sentence that changes everything. Some play the role of antagonists, creating tension that forces you to grow, while others act as allies who offer encouragement and support. All of them, regardless of role or duration, are necessary for the fullness of your journey. The greatest gift you can offer anyone is your own awakening. When you heal your wounds, you stop unconsciously wounding others. When you cultivate peace within, you radiate peace to those around you. When you learn to love yourself deeply, you love others without clinging or expectation. Every person in your story is there through the mysterious intelligence of consciousness, seeking to know itself more completely. Your task is to honor their presence, learn from their gifts, and release them with gratitude when their chapter ends, trusting that new characters will arrive exactly when needed for the next stage of your unfolding. Life, however, has a way of repeating its lessons. You may notice the same type of relationship drama reappearing with different faces, the same financial struggles wearing new disguises, the same workplace conflicts unfolding in fresh settings, or the same family dynamics echoing across generations. It can feel like a broken record, looping the same song until you're desperate for it to stop. But Buddhism teaches that life is the most patient of teachers. It never abandons you for failing to understand the first time, or the 10th, or even the 50th. Instead, it presents the same essential lesson in slightly different forms until you finally develop the awareness and skill to move into the next level of understanding. This repetition is not punishment, nor is it proof that you are broken. It is simply how consciousness learns and evolves. Just as a child practices writing the same letter until muscle memory is formed, Life offers repeated chances to practice new ways of being until they become natural and integrated. Unresolved patterns in consciousness continue to manifest similar experiences. If you meet conflict with anger and defensiveness, you will keep attracting situations that evoke those reactions until you learn a different response. If you continually sacrifice your needs to avoid disappointing others, you will find yourself in relationships that exploit that tendency until you learn the art of setting boundaries. A woman once described how she spent 15 years caught in the same painful pattern, falling for partners who seemed perfect at first, but turned out to be emotionally unavailable. At first, she blamed them, believing she simply had bad luck in love, but eventually she faced the uncomfortable truth. She was the common denominator in all those relationships. Through therapy and self-reflection, she discovered that deep intimacy frightened her. Having grown up with parents who used affection as a weapon, offering it only when she met their expectations, she found emotionally distant partners strangely familiar, even safe, though they left her feeling lonely and frustrated. I was recreating my childhood over and over, hoping this time it would end differently, she admitted. The recognition was painful, but transformative. Instead of trying to change her partners, she began working on her own capacity for intimacy. She practiced staying present when closeness deepened, rather than sabotaging the connection. She learned to distinguish between surface charm and genuine availability. By addressing the root cause, she was finally able to break free of the cycle that had defined her love life for years. The key to dissolving repetitive cycles lies in what Buddhism calls clear seeing, the ability to observe your patterns with compassion rather than judgment. The first step isn't to force change, but to notice what is actually happening. What triggers spark the same responses? What emotions arise before you slip into familiar behaviors? What beliefs about yourself or others quietly fuel the repetition? A man shared how he noticed a different pattern in his work life. For years, he would leave jobs after about 2 years, always feeling unappreciated and overlooked for promotions. I told myself I just had terrible bosses, he reflected. But when it happened at the 4th company, I had to consider the problem wasn't entirely external. By observing his behavior more carefully, he saw that he routinely took on extra work without communicating his contributions. He assumed his effort would automatically be recognized. When it wasn't, resentment built, he withdrew, and the cycle repeated, his value becoming less visible just when it mattered most. I was creating the very situation I was complaining about, he realized. Breaking the cycle required skills he had never practiced. He began documenting his achievements, communicating them clearly, and learning to ask directly for what he wanted, instead of hoping others would notice. Within 8 months, he earned the promotion that had eluded him for years. Sometimes patterns repeat because we are unconsciously trying to heal old wounds through new experiences. We are drawn to situations that echo past pain, hoping that this time the outcome will be different. This is consciousness attempting to resolve unfinished business. But without awareness, the repetition only recreates the same dynamics that caused the original wound. Buddhism teaches that true healing does not come from trying to recreate the past with a different ending, but from cultivating new capacities in the present. Instead of seeking from romantic partners the love you were denied as a child, you learn to give that love to yourself. Instead of chasing validation from authority figures, you build an inner confidence that is no longer dependent on external approval. The real graduation moment arrives when, in the midst of a familiar situation, you make a different choice. When the old trigger arises, but you pause to breathe instead of reacting. When you set a boundary rather than people-pleasing. When you speak your truth instead of silencing yourself. When you choose self-compassion over self-criticism. These decisions may seem small, but they mark profound shifts in consciousness. A pattern ends not when you merely understand it intellectually, but when you embody a new way of being. It ends when you no longer need external situations to teach you about boundaries, because you naturally uphold them, when you no longer attract chaos, because peace has taken root within you, when you stop repeating self-destructive behaviors, because you truly recognize your worth. This doesn't mean challenges vanish. Life continues to bring growth opportunities, but they evolve in step with your expanding capacity. Lessons become subtler, and growth becomes more refined. You may progress from learning basic self-worth to cultivating deep compassion, or from mastering firm boundaries to developing wisdom about when flexibility serves better than rigidity. Some resist this teaching, fearing it places responsibility for suffering on those who endure it. But this is not about blame. External circumstances and the choices of others undeniably shape your life. Still, focusing on what lies within your sphere of influence, your responses, your choices, your inner development, is far more empowering than remaining trapped in victim consciousness. Right now, reflect on your own life. Is there a pattern that keeps repeating, appearing in different disguises? What lesson might it be offering? What capacity might you need to develop to meet it differently? And how would things change if you saw this repetition not as a punishment, but as a teacher, patient, persistent, and invested in your growth? Repetition is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of life's faith in your ability to grow. It is proof that consciousness trusts you enough to keep offering the same lesson until you are ready to integrate it. When you finally learn what life has been asking of you, the relief is profound, not because the challenge disappears, but because you realize you now hold the tools to meet it with skill and steadiness. The pattern that once felt like a prison becomes a doorway into freedom, and the lesson that once seemed impossible becomes the very foundation on which all further growth rests. Life is endlessly patient, endlessly creative, and endlessly committed to your awakening. The same situations will keep appearing, sometimes in different forms, until you develop the awareness to transform them. And when that transformation finally happens, you often marvel at how something that once felt overwhelming has become so simple. The pattern dissolves the moment its lesson is fully embodied, and from there the true adventure begins. You did not arrive in this life by accident. Your consciousness chose this body, this family, these challenges, and this timing, not in a rigidly predetermined way that cancels your free will, but through the natural magnetism of awareness seeking out the conditions most suited for growth. The circumstances of your birth, the blend of gifts and struggles that shape your existence, the era you were born into, none of it is random. Buddhism teaches that awareness carries an innate intelligence, one that gravitates toward the exact experiences needed to deepen understanding and expand compassion, much like iron filings arranging themselves around a magnet. Your life is the curriculum chosen by consciousness, designed to cultivate qualities that could only emerge through your particular journey. But purpose is not some grand hidden mission you must discover and execute flawlessly. It is not a single career, relationship, or achievement that will suddenly make everything fall into place. Purpose is quieter, more intimate, woven into the fabric of your daily life, waiting to be recognized in both ordinary and extraordinary moments. It reveals itself through what consistently draws you in, what stirs your compassion, what makes you feel alive. It is found in the meeting place between your natural gifts and the world's needs. Purpose emerges when you stop trying to be who you think you should be, and instead begin expressing who you already are. It is discovered not through endless thinking or grand planning, but by living attentively and noticing what repeatedly calls to your heart. One man spent years searching for his life purpose through books, workshops, and retreats. "I thought it would arrive as some dramatic revelation," he admitted, "but the more I searched, the more confused I became. His breakthrough came unexpectedly, while volunteering at a food bank. At first, I only went because a friend asked, he recalled. But as I helped organize the donations, something felt completely natural. I could see ways to make the system more efficient and more dignified for the people we served. I wasn't searching for purpose anymore. I was living it. Within 2 years, he left his corporate job and began working full-time in non-profit management. This is how purpose often reveals itself, not through sudden epiphanies or lightning bolt realizations, but through the accumulation of small, authentic moments that feel aligned, meaningful, and real. Purpose is not discovered in grand revelations, but in subtle recognitions. Those moments when you lose track of time, doing something you love, when certain problems naturally call you to solve them, when conversations light you up, or when injustices stir you to act. Buddhism describes this as right livelihood, work that harms neither yourself nor others, while contributing to the well-being of all beings. This doesn't mean you must become a monk or a social worker. Rather, it's about aligning your daily actions with your deepest values, expressing your authentic gifts in service something larger than personal gain. A teacher once shared that her purpose revealed itself not in the classroom, but in the margins of education. She loved teaching, but her heart kept breaking for the children who struggled, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they learned different. Staying after school, she began experimenting with new approaches to match their learning styles. What began as informal tutoring grew into a program that transformed her entire district's approach to learning differences. I never set out to be an advocate, she reflected, but my heart kept breaking for these brilliant kids being told they weren't good enough. That heartbreak became my compass. This reveals something essential about purpose. It often emerges from what troubles you most deeply. The suffering you cannot ignore, the gaps you naturally notice, the wounds you heal within yourself. These can become the very sources of your greatest gifts to the world. Yet purpose does not always require starting a movement, changing careers, or launching an organization. It can be lived in how you raise your children, how you treat the cashier at the grocery store, or how you listen to a friend in crisis. Small acts of compassion and consciousness ripple outward in ways you may never see. A janitor at a hospital embodied this truth beautifully. I clean floors, but that's not my real job, he explained. My real job is creating an environment where healing can happen. I notice worried families in waiting rooms. I pay attention when someone needs directions or a kind word. His presence was so deeply felt that both patients and co-workers regarded him as one of the most important people in the facility. Purpose isn't about status or recognition, he reflected. It's about bringing your whole self to whatever you're doing, remembering that everything affects everything else. When you understand this, your perspective on purpose shifts. You stop waiting for the perfect opportunity and begin expressing it wherever you are, with whatever resources you already have. You bring consciousness to mundane tasks, presence to ordinary interactions, and service even to situations that may not appear meaningful. In doing so, you discover that purpose is less about what you do and more about how you do it, an ever-present possibility woven into each moment of your life. What makes you come alive? This single question slices through all the noise of expectations, obligations, and comparisons, pointing you back to the intersection where your authentic nature meets your contribution to the world. Perhaps it is creating beauty through art, music, or design. Perhaps it is solving complex problems through analysis and innovation. Perhaps it is nurturing growth in people, plants, or communities. Whatever form it takes, the feeling of aliveness is your consciousness recognizing its own natural expression. a sense of rightness that arises when inner truth meets the world's needs. It is not always comfortable or easy. True aliveness often requires courage, vulnerability, and growth, yet it carries an unmistakable authenticity that can never be faked or forced. One woman discovered this when she cared for her grandmother in her final months of life. In the presence of grief and fear, she found she could sit quietly without trying to fix anything, simply holding space with tenderness. I discovered I had a natural ability to be with people in their most vulnerable moments, she reflected. This awakening led her to become a hospice counselor, a path many would find too heavy, but that brought her profound fulfillment. Death work isn't morbid, she explained. It's life work. Helping people face their mortality with grace helps them live more fully. I come alive in those moments of truth and tenderness. Your own purpose may not look dramatic or obvious to others. It may take shape in raising children with consciousness, preserving family traditions, cultivating beautiful spaces, or simply offering a presence of peace in chaotic environments. It may be expressed not in producing or achieving, but in learning, growing and healing generational patterns. The key is to recognize that your existence has intrinsic value, not because of what you accomplish, but because of who you are becoming. Every step toward greater awareness, compassion, and authenticity creates ripples that touch lives in ways you may never see. You did not arrive here by accident. The particular mix of your gifts, challenges, and circumstances has created opportunities for experiences that could unfold through no one else. Your thread in the tapestry of existence is essential to the beauty and strength of the whole. Purpose, then, is not something you must search for outside yourself. It is something you remember, express, and trust. You can begin living it more fully right now, not by overhauling your life, but by bringing more consciousness to what you already do, by listening closely to what calls to you, by following what makes you feel alive, and by trusting that consciousness knows where it is leading you, even when you do not. Your life is not a mistake. Your challenges are not punishments. Your gifts are not accidents. You are here on purpose, with purpose, as purpose itself, expressing through the vast and mysterious complexity of human existence. The question isn't whether you have a purpose, it's whether you're ready to live it. Sometimes life has to shatter to reveal what's unbreakable. The job that defines your identity disappears overnight. The relationship you built your world around crumbles. The health you took for granted betrays you. The beliefs that once gave life meaning suddenly feel hollow. In these moments of complete dissolution, when everything familiar falls away, something profound can be discovered beneath the wreckage. What mystics throughout history have called the dark night of the spirit is not punishment or failure, but often consciousness preparing for a fundamental shift in how you understand yourself and reality. When the structures you've built your identity around prove inadequate for who you're becoming, they must fall away to make space for something more authentic and expansive. Yet it's important to remember that if you're experiencing thoughts of self-harm, severe depression, or a sense of disconnection from reality, this isn't merely a spiritual experience, but a signal to seek professional support immediately. True spiritual awakening enhances your connection to life. It does not increase the desire to escape it. The guidance here complements but never replaces proper mental health care in a genuine crisis. That said, there are seasons when life seems to unravel simultaneously, and these experiences often contain the seeds of profound transformation. Buddhism teaches that consciousness sometimes outgrows its current container and must reorganize at a more inclusive level, like a snake shedding its skin or a butterfly dissolving in its cocoon. The process may look like destruction, but is actually preparation for rebirth. One woman described her great falling apart in her early 40s. Everything I'd worked for was disappearing. My marriage ended, my career stalled, my parents were aging and needed care. I felt like I was free-falling with no parachute. For months she struggled with depression and anxiety, seeking therapy and support from friends. Yet somewhere in the darkness she noticed something unexpected. All the roles she'd been playing, the perfect wife, the successful professional, the dutiful daughter, were falling away, but she herself remained. Beneath all those identities was something that could not be destroyed by circumstances. This recognition became the foundation for rebuilding her life from a place of greater authenticity. I had to lose everything I thought I was to discover who I actually am, she reflected. The breakdown became a breakthrough, but only after I stopped resisting it and began learning from it. For this is the paradox of spiritual crisis. It often requires losing the old self in order to discover the true self. The identities, beliefs, and structures that once provided safety eventually become too small for the consciousness that longs to emerge. And like a hermit crab outgrowing its shell, you must step into temporary vulnerability before finding a more fitting home. Ancient mythology captures this perfectly in the phoenix, the bird that does not simply molt or gradually transform, but instead burns completely to ash, before rising renewed, its fire not optional, but essential to regeneration. In the same way, certain forms of spiritual growth demand a full dissolution of old patterns before new ones can take root. Yet unlike the phoenix, human transformation unfolds in relationship with the support of others, with the wisdom of those who have walked similar paths. Because breaking open does not mean breaking alone. One man described his own midlife spiritual crisis that at first looked like clinical depression. He lost interest in work, social life, even hobbies that once inspired him. Seeking therapy and considering medication, he also turned toward Buddhist and contemplative tradition, discovering that mystics had described this very territory for millennia: the dissolving of ego's attachments, the collapse of assumptions, the realization that nothing solid remained to hold on to. This knowledge did not remove the difficulty, but it gave him trust in the process instead of mere endurance. Over 18 months, with therapeutic support and spiritual practice, he emerged with a radically different relationship to meaning and purpose. He stopped trying to extract significance from external achievements, and instead found it in simple presence. The depression lifted, but more importantly, he uncovered a peace, no longer dependent on circumstances going well. This kind of breaking open makes space for what is beautiful, for when the familiar structures of identity collapse, terror and disorientation come first, but in the spaciousness that follows, new possibilities, compassion, wisdom, authentic joy, finally have room to grow. The key lies in discerning between necessary dissolution and unnecessary suffering. For some, pain comes as the natural ache of growth, like muscles strengthening or a heart expanding, while other pain arises from resisting change that longs to unfold. Spiritual crisis usually contains both, and wisdom rests in knowing when to surrender and when to seek support. Buddhism teaches that attachment to any fixed identity creates suffering because consciousness is fluid and expansive by nature, and when you cling too tightly to being the successful one, the helper, or the strong one, you restrict your ability to respond authentically to life's unfolding. Crisis has a way of stripping away these rigid self-concepts, forcing a release that creates space for a more inclusive and flexible sense of identity. This does not mean that all crisis brings awakening, or that suffering is inherently noble. Many endure genuine trauma and loss without spiritual benefit, and it would be unkind to suggest otherwise. But for those in periods of deep questioning and dissolution, recognizing the potential transformative quality of such experiences can offer both hope and direction. The process is rarely neat or linear. Progress one day can feel like drowning the next. Moments of luminous insight are often followed by hours of confusion, and the old self rarely departs gracefully while the new self seldom arrives fully formed. Patience and self-compassion are therefore indispensable companions during these transitions. If you find yourself in a time when everything feels uncertain and unstable, Remember that dissolution often precedes creation. The caterpillar does not know it will become a butterfly when it enters the cocoon. It only knows the old way of being is no longer possible. Trust that consciousness knows its course, even when the mind cannot yet make sense of it. And remember too that seeking support from therapists, trusted friends, spiritual directors, or community is not spiritual weakness, but wisdom, because isolation can deepen crisis rather than resolve. What seems like an ending may in fact be the beginning you have been unconsciously preparing for your entire life. What appears to be failure may be liberation from a success that was never truly yours. And what looks like collapse may actually be a hidden falling together in ways you could never have planned. Breaking open is making space for something more authentic, more compassionate, more aligned with your deepest truth. The phoenix rises not because the fire is pleasant, but because the fire is necessary, and you too carry within you everything needed to rise. This is where the power of gratitude and surrender enters. What if you stopped fighting and began dancing, not bracing against life's rhythms, but moving with them, discovering that what you have been resisting is trying to partner with you in the most beautiful dance you will ever know. This shift from resistance to flow is nurtured through gratitude and surrender, two of Buddhism's most transformative practices, not a superficial gratitude that pretends everything is fine, but a deep recognition that even in hardship life is offering something of value, not a defeated surrender that abandons hope, but the wise willingness to work with reality rather than against. Gratitude, in its deepest sense, is about training awareness to notice what is present alongside the challenges, rather than pretending to be thankful for the pain itself. During difficult times, it means recognizing the friends who show up, the strength you uncover, the insights that arise from struggle, and even the simple fact that you are still breathing and capable of growth. A woman in the middle of a messy divorce described how gratitude practice saved her sanity. At first, she scoffed when her therapist suggested writing down 3 things she was grateful for each day, but she tried anyway, starting with the most basic: I have coffee, and my dog still loves me. She laughed at the simplicity, yet over time she began to notice more: appreciation for her lawyer's competence, for friends who listened without judgment, for her own resilience. The practice didn't erase her pain, but it kept the pain from consuming her completely. This is gratitude as spiritual technology, a deliberate practice that rewires the brain to notice abundance alongside scarcity, beauty alongside difficulty, support alongside challenge. With repetition, positive recognition becomes more natural and automatic, shaping a mind that leans toward wholeness. Yet gratitude reaches its deepest power when paired with surrender, the art of releasing how you think things should be, and working with how they actually are. Surrender is not passivity or defeat, but wisdom, a recognition that resistance to reality often creates more suffering than reality itself, and that freedom comes from dancing with circumstances instead of fighting them. A farmer whose crops were destroyed by a flood could have spent months raging against the weather, but instead he turned to learning about crop insurance, soil management, and alternative methods, saying, I couldn't control the flood, but I could control how I responded to it. In his surrender lay strength, the freedom to focus energy on what remained possible, rather than what was lost. This kind of surrender requires immense courage to stop battling reality and begin working with it, to trust that life carries an intelligence greater than personal preferences, and to believe that even when the bigger picture is hidden, it still exists. Buddhism teaches that reality moves with its own rhythm, like music unfolding through pauses, crescendos, and transitions. When you force a different tempo, discord arises, but when you sense the underlying beat and learn to move with it, life becomes more harmonious. Sometimes it asks you to quicken your pace, sometimes to slow down, and sometimes to rest completely. Wisdom lies in sensing which rhythm life is asking for and responding accordingly. A musician learned this truth through years of performance, recalling how early in her career she tried to control every detail of her concerts, tensing up whenever something went wrong and watching the whole performance suffer. Over time, she discovered that unexpected moments were not disasters, but invitations to improvise. And this shift in perspective transformed her art into something more fluid and alive. The same principle applies in daily life. When traffic is heavy, instead of stressing about being late, you can use the time for reflection or simply breathing. When plans fall through, rather than seeing failure, you can look for the new possibilities opening up. When people don't act as you expect, instead of trying to control them, you can practice acceptance and adjust your own response. Surrender begins with these small, almost imperceptible releases throughout the day, softening the tension you notice in your body, loosening your mental grip on specific outcomes, or accepting what has already happened, rather than fighting against it. These micro-surrenders prepare you for the larger releases that life will inevitably require. Perhaps the most profound aspect of gratitude and surrender is how they work together to create what Buddhists call equanimity, the ability to remain centered no matter what arises. When you are grateful for what is present and surrendered to what is changing, you cultivate an inner stability that no external condition can shake. A woman caring for her mother with Alzheimer's discovered this during the most painful period of her life. Some days were heartbreaking, yet she found herself grateful for her mother's rare smiles, for caregivers who showed true compassion, and for her own deepening capacity to love without condition. At the same time, she had to surrender the expectation that her mother would remain the person she had always known. By meeting her mother where she was, moment by moment, their relationship became peaceful again, different, but still beautiful. In letting go, she found what she had been seeking all along, peace that came not from controlling circumstances, but from accepting them, love that arose not from possession, but from appreciation, and security that came not from guaranteed outcomes, but from trusting her ability to meet whatever life brought. The dance between gratitude and surrender creates a life of grace rather than struggle, where you learn to appreciate what is present while remaining open to what is changing, to work toward goals while holding them lightly, to care deeply while staying unattached to specific results, and to live fully while accepting that everything is temporary. This is not a destination you arrive at once and for all, but a practice you return to again and again. Some days, you will move gracefully with life's rhythms, and other days, you will resist, only to be reminded to soften and begin again. What matters is the willingness to keep returning to gratitude and surrender whenever you notice you have drifted away. Even now, there is something in your life asking for gratitude, something simple, immediate, perhaps overlooked, and something asking for surrender, an expectation or attempt at control that is creating unnecessary strain. What would shift if you softened around both? What would open if you stopped fighting and started dancing, remembering that the music has been playing all along and life has been waiting for you to join? And here you are coming home to this moment, having traveled so far only to arrive exactly where you began. Hours ago, you set out, seeking to understand why everything happens for a reason. Along the way, you explored ancient wisdom and modern insight, listened to stories of awakening, and discovered teachings carried across having journeyed through landscapes of consciousness few ever touch, you arrive at the most profound destination of all, the present moment, exactly as it is. The Buddha taught that all seeking eventually leads us back to what was never lost. Peace, which is not earned, but remembered as your natural state. Love, which is not something to find, but something you already are. Wholeness, which was never absent, but only hidden beneath stories of brokenness. Reflect on how much has shifted within you. What once seemed random has revealed itself as intelligent unfolding. What was painful has shown itself as a source of strength. Those who challenged you have been recognized as disguised teachers, and patterns that once frustrated you have become gateways to growth. Even chaos has revealed its hidden order, orchestrated by a wisdom beyond your personal mind. And in all this, you have learned that impermanence is not your enemy, but your liberation, gently freeing you from clinging to what was never meant to last. You've discovered that your thoughts and actions ripple across the ocean of existence, connecting you to every other being in ways both subtle and profound. And you've practiced letting go of attachments that create suffering, finding that love multiplies when shared without possession. You've explored the art of acceptance, learning to move with life's currents instead of exhausting yourself swimming upstream. And you've uncovered meaning hidden within your deepest struggles, recognizing that even pain becomes raw material for transformation. Through mindfulness, you've seen that the present moment holds everything you once sought in past and future, and you've realized that shifting your inner landscape naturally reshapes your outer world, proving reality responds to consciousness more intimately than most believe. Chaos, once feared, has revealed itself as an agent of renewal, breaking down the old to make space for growth, while trust in Dharma, the natural intelligence orchestrating life with perfect timing, has freed you from the illusion of control, showing that cooperation with the flow is far more powerful than resistance. You've recognized the web of connection, embracing all beings, understanding that personal healing contributes to collective healing, and you've experienced how inner transformation creates outer miracles, with the world reflecting back whatever consciousness you embody. The people in your story have been seen as essential teachers, life's repeated lessons as invitations to integrate wisdom, and crises as opportunities to awaken to what cannot be broken. Through gratitude and surrender, you've learned to dance with life instead of fighting it, remembering that you are not separate from the wisdom that created you, but that very wisdom rediscovering itself through you. Most importantly, you've felt the community that emerges when consciousness recognizes itself in countless forms across the world, others seeking the same truths, asking the same questions, longing for the same peace, reminding you that you were never alone. To have journeyed this far is itself a gift, and gratitude flows for your willingness to grow, to choose awareness over unconsciousness, love over fear, and understanding over judgment. For every step you've taken heals, not only your life but contributes to the awakening of our human family. If these teachings touched you, share them. If they reminded you of your own wisdom, trust that inner knowing. If they brought you peace, let the practice continue. And if they helped you remember who you truly are, let that remembrance guide your choices from this moment onward. The journey doesn't end here, it begins here. Each moment becomes an opportunity to embody these truths. Every interaction a chance to practice presence, compassion, and wisdom. Every challenge an invitation to trust the deeper intelligence shaping your life. You came seeking why everything happens for a reason, and though the reasons may not always be clear, comfortable, or aligned with expectation, you've found the golden thread running through it all. Love, love, discovering itself through your unique perspective. Love strengthening through struggle. Love growing wiser through your questions. Love reflected in every face you meet. Everything you've experienced has been love in disguise, waiting for you to see clearly. And here, in this very moment, you realize the truth that has been here all along. Love is all there is.